in the league, went straight for the title. No time to idle. I finna get it, put that on the Bible. This is survival. Gotta treat every move made like the final. One by a mile. Nobody believe it, they all in denial. Look at me, look at me. Still in the show, that's the crook in me. They want me gone with the hook in me. Asking why is he here like I shouldn't be. I've been on grind since I old. 10,000 hours the motto. They see the bag is coming out, they flocking to me like I won the lotto. Dancing with the devil, there's no recital. I'm killing competition, ain't no revival. I shoot it to kill it, I'm aiming for vitals. I'm showing no mercy when facing my rivals. Snakes in the grass, they getting exposed. I know they be lurking, I'm watching them close. Acting like friends, but really they foes. Saw they be scheming and said adios. Get it, don't mindset. Ay, back with a vengeance, back on the grinds, back to the business. Ay, God is my witness, they watching my moves like shows they binging. Ay, best keep distance, all of my haters send best of wishes. I get to the bag with the quickness, no I don't need no assistance, no. Yeah, no playing it safe, I said let's get it, you say not today. What can I say, you ain't gon' go for it, get out the way. Yeah, got no time to waste. Can't be with me if you're not at my pace. You're not at my level, you're not in my race. One foot on the gas, I'm pushing the brakes. You dancing with the devil, there's no recital. I'm killing competition, ain't no revival. I shoot it to kill it, I'm aiming for vitals. I'm showing no mercy when facing my rivals. Snakes in the grass, they getting exposed. I know they be lurking, I'm watching them close. Acting like friends, but really they foes. Saw they be scheming and said adios. Don't mindset. I gotta get it, don't mindset. I gotta get it, don't mindset.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to BMW Sim Ignition, where we get things fired up and ready before every single BMW Sim GT Cup by bringing you all the news in the BMW esports world. Today, we've got a cool show talking to two very different backgrounds, but two very, very special and gifted and talented drivers in Niels Nayak and Max Benecke about their history as sim racers and also how coaching can help maybe you. We'll find out. But first, we have to look back on the last round of the BMW Sim GT Cup. It was Watkins Glen, and it was won by Team Redline.
The BMW Sim GT Cup landed in upstate New York, and in qualifying, it was Redline with 3 cars in the top 5 looking strong, Redline Red and Patrick Coltzman on pole position. Looking backwards, the story was about Alejandro Sanchez starting from the back for the Apex Racing team. It was a clean start to the race at the front, a bit messier in the mid-pack into turn 1, very messy at the rear of the field into the bus stop chicane, but Alejandro Sanchez got through and began his climb up through the field. With 4 minutes done in the race, Nathan Lewis lost it by himself coming up through the toe, and Carl Jansen had nowhere to go, slamming into the big red machine. Williams and BS lost the machine in that incident. At the same time, Redline made it a 1, 2, and 3, looking to control the tempo of the race, while behind them, Gallo Valero in the Apex Academy car was swarmed, going 3 wide on the run down into the heel. What a hectic start it was proving to be. With 16 minutes of the race done, Redline swapped around at the front with Team Redline Blue starting to punch the hole in the air and taking on the fuel-burning load. That was a move, though, that gained significance when 6 minutes later, lap traffic caused chaos for the likes of Rainer Talvar and Luke Bennett, who lost positions trying to get past some lap traffic into turn 1. The Redline Blue machine pulled out an over 1.5 second advantage and looked to stretch the gap. 30 minutes of the race done and drama between cars in the top 10. Arnage competition getting bundled wide by Redline Orange on the run down into turn 1. That car would have to pull its way onto pit lane. With an hour of the race done, the pit stop gambles began, and it was a 2-tire gamble for Williams and Kova that got them out 1 and 2, with Williams enjoying an 8-second lead over Team Redline Blue that took 4 tires going through the pit stop cycle. Most teams took 4 tires, but with cloud cover over the circuit, dropping track temperatures, would 2 tires be the race-winning call. It didn't take long, though, for Florian Labigre to jump to the point of the cars that took 4 tires with a bold move around Gianni Vecchio before a couple of moments later, lap traffic caused all of the top 5 to lose some time as they scrambled to survive. Then Kova, second place on the road, were closed by RHE and Redline, but went uber defensive, pushing Labigre all the way to the grass. RHE tried again and again and again, but ultimately, with one of those attempts into the bus stop chicane, Maximilian Benecke got a little too close to Florian Labigre. Not 1, but 2 bits of contact. Labigre held on, but slid backwards. Benecke was given a 5-second time penalty, and instantly he knew he might be in trouble, because at the first time of asking, he got past that Kova machine on 2 tires. The very next lap, Vecchio and the Redline Blue machine got past as well. RHE was still stuck, and that frustration began to boil over for Florian Labigre, and Antiohola felt the wrath of it. For the second consecutive race, Antiohola on a tire gamble was turned by an RHE machine. With just over 15 minutes left in the race, 2 tires had started to fall off the cliff. Benecke had closed the gap and passed with ease as he looked to build up that 5-second buffer, but that was going to be academic. Benecke was in control of the race. With 7 minutes left, Vecchio was finally able to get past Williams, but already at that point it was well and truly settled. The battle raged on for the podium with BS competition on the charge after Rainer Talvar's interesting first stint, but at the front, Benecke sailed to victory. Team Redline Red, after going to second step on the podium at Sebring, finally with a first to the checkered flag.
So there you go. A look at the standings after Watkins Glen, and before we get into round 6 at Spa-Francorchamps. A day at the Spa, we're jumping over the ocean and heading our way to Belgium from upstate New York. As mentioned, Team Redline won that. Max Benecke, Patrick Holzman, big jump forward in the standings for them, 7th and 8th, but it's still Phil Dennis and Rainer Talvar from BS Competition that lead the way. Now remember, despite that in these BMW Sim GT Cup races, you share a car, you have a co-driver. The drivers are individually scored on their finish, and that's because at the end of the year, BMW Sim Live is an individual performance and cup trophy. So that's the way it breaks down. As I said, though, we are heading to Spa today. Before we do that, though, I think it's time to talk to our winner from last week at Watkins Glen. Not about that, however, but he and Niels Nijak, Max Beneke and Niels Nijak, going to be joining us to talk about their histories in sim racing and something more. So let's get into it right now. All right, so here we are with Max and Niels. Obviously, Max Beneke and Niels Nijak, for those of you who aren't familiar with their last names, but you certainly should be. You guys are two of, obviously the best sim racers in the world, but you have very different backgrounds in a lot of ways. You come from different teams within the BMW family. You come from different sims, which you specialize in. But when and where did you start? Especially, let's start with you on this one, Niels, because I knew you more as a manager and a Counter-Strike fan than an actual sim driver, and now here you are leading the way in your respective category.
Yeah, and I was probably there when Max didn't even think of sim racing yet. So it all started for me and probably in the 90s when my father got a reel for himself, but kind of made it a gift for me. So I think he enjoyed it as well. And that really got serious early 2000s. I had a broken collarbone. And for whatever reason, that got me to get my steering wheel from under the desk onto the desk. I was driving one-handed initially. Started with Live for Speed, and half a year later, I suddenly was in the ESL Pro Series. That's what all kind of started 19 years ago now.
That's crazy. Yeah, I know all about broken collarbones. I don't think I would have been driving one-handed to a competitive level. So that's pretty impressive. And interestingly enough, that's kind of how I started my family in motorsport. It was through dad, but also he bought a steering wheel and my brother played it. And I used to sneak on and use it too when I was too young and probably was breaking it by ripping on it. Max, you, on the other hand, I know Niels, makes the joke before you even knew sim racing, but you kind of only came into iRacing. What is it now? 6 years ago, maybe less?
Yeah, it's not that long actually, but obviously also I have a long history in doing racing games. I grew up with motorsports. I did karting myself. So I was on the PlayStation very early doing different games, and I was always looking for the competitive side. AI racing was not for me, so I was always looking in some leagues in the F1 game especially. And before that I did Gran Turismo and stuff. So that's basically how I came to iRacing. And I was doing a league in the F1 game, which was called the Pure Racing League. And then afterwards I joined the Pure Racing team, and that's where the connection comes from. And they joined iRacing like 2 years before me. And then I joined them in I think summer 2015. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. And presumably, obviously now you're with Team Redline. That's more of a full-time gig, if you will. Presumably that's when it got very serious for you. Not that you didn't take it seriously, but that it became sort of more of a career, if that makes sense. Because I think it is now at this point. I think we're all there in the sim world. When did that sort of happen for you? When did it click that you could suddenly make this a full-time thing? And when did it get really serious in that regard?
Yeah, it's actually a good question. I think it was around 2019, maybe 2020 even. There was basically no real big series you could drive. Obviously there was a World Championship series on iRacing, but in the end there was only a 25K prize pool. So when those bigger prize pools came up with different series, that's where you knew, all right, we're going into the right direction and this is going to be full-time. So it was around end of 2019, beginning 2020, something like that.
And for you, Niels, when was it? Because like I say, I knew you in the capacity formerly with G2. Now, obviously, you're with BS Competition, but you were managing teams, not even so much driving per se.
Yeah, I did the driving, as I said, back then already. And I think that was 2006, I believe, where BMW already did a series on it for Speed. And it all felt like it was taking off. I was second, sadly, in that series back then, where the winner got a BMW M6. And afterwards, suddenly, the financial crisis hit and all the sponsoring money, had to go into maintaining the core business, and all the marketing stuff kind of, died off. And sim racing had definitely had a bit of a slump. So at the time I was so young, I didn't really think about doing this full time or not. I didn't have any idea basically at all. So just went to finish school, did my studies, and suddenly in 2018, I met again Danny Engels, who was the guy who won the M6 back then. And he was managing.
I did not know that about him. I did not know that he won.
This is like how he got into esports basically, because he was this world's best gamer or something that he won back in the day. So Yeah, so he was the guy who won the M6. So we kept that connection. He was working for G2 in Berlin. Slept on my couch even when it all started for him. And this is how I somehow got back into sim racing. Then was the E-Rock in Mexico. So Race of Champions, the virtual edition. And then he told me, hey, you could do this probably. So get a wheel. I did. Drove on my balcony chair, grinded it out of it, qualified for it. And then, afterwards he offered me the job at G2 because he couldn't handle it. He had so much stuff with League of Legends, Counter-Strike to do that wasn't enough time for him. Gave it to me, and suddenly I was in there. And I thought, okay, why not give it a shot? And from there, just kind of develop on its own.
It's interesting, going back. I mean, there's a lot to take from that, but going back to what you said about the financial crisis and sort of hitting a slump, I think a lot of esports did that. Again, my background in Counter-Strike, I was merely a fan back then, but obviously the North American leagues at the time all dried up, and a lot of the European teams were based in that situation. And I think it hit everyone kind of hard, and it kind of touched on maybe this is your answer for it, but what was the sort of the most frustrating point of your development to getting to where you are now? At what point did you think, maybe it was just a talent wise that you had to overcome something, or was it simply that, that you didn't think it was viable that could stay in this career?
I guess back then it was just the prize money was so little. I think the ESL had 5,000 euros as a prize pool for the entire series. Obviously that's not enough, not even for a 17-year-old.
Yep.
So back then, it was not going anywhere. You had to play too many roles basically to get out of it something. And I think even today it's not viable enough to be just a driver or just a coach or whatever. I think it's, at least to me, it feels like you still need to combine things. And I guess the frustrating part initially is the insane time commitment that sim racing just needs. So it takes your morning, takes your noon, takes your evening. And just to make it viable, I think taking that step before that, I guess, was the frustration. And once you decide to actually do it, and if you have that capacity, I think it's a good thing with a lot of work involved.
I would say it takes your, all day, like you say, Max, for you in some cases doing 24-hour races. It probably takes your nighttime as well. What about you? What was the most frustrating part of your development, I guess? And I want to ask what was the hardest step to take as well in that? So not just the most frustrating thing, but what was the hardest thing to overcome for you, whether from a learning perspective or a business perspective?
I guess it must have been the beginning of iRacing, because I was coming from the F1 game and I was quite good there, and then I joined and was like, it's going to be as easy. And then I joined and I was like half a second off my teammates, and I was like, oh my god, that's tough. And that's the actual first learning phase you have, where you have to know everything they are doing and you have to learn from them. And that's where I started to really just push, and that was basically the toughest phase. But obviously, talking afterwards about all the races we had, there's always a couple of races which just don't end up as you want to, and if you practice like 20-30 hours for it, then it gets really frustrating. But those are more small parts. But like the actual toughest phase for me was really the beginning of iRacing.
Yeah, I guess changing games is always difficult. Me learning a single game is difficult, let's be honest. You touched on it a little bit there, though, Max, because when you joined iRacing, you mentioned, you have teammates suddenly you're trying to keep up with. Was there people that gave you support, or was there people that you learned from? Not necessarily, well, maybe as a direct coach, if you will, but also as just sort of a mentor.
Absolutely. Yeah. The guys I was driving in the F1 game later joined me in the team, or I joined them, better to say like that. And I took the replay file from them. I saw videos of them driving. They told me what to do on the braking. They teach me everything. Also about strategy, because, iRacing is not just about being quick, but also about being smart in the race. So I learned everything from them in the beginning. And that's where I had a big advantage coming into iRacing compared to a lot of other people who just start on their own.
Yeah, and how do you think that you play a role now maybe in teaching others in your team as sort of, I mean, I use the saying all the time, but Mr. iRacing with your 11K I rating?
Oh, well, I mean, it was in 2018 where I decided that I could teach others, and particularly, and I did until now, I think 300-400 coachings already with different people. So, and also in my team, obviously you have a lot of telemetry now available. So whenever I set a lap time, somebody else can directly check the lap time and see the telemetry and learn from it. And we're at that point right now where there's like, you can have the same lap time of 5 different people, but still, if you combine their best sectors, you probably can find another 2/10. And that's like the point where we're at. So you can learn from everyone and people can learn from me. And yeah, but especially the coaching side has been very interesting for me. And I always like to see people improve like a second or two in just like 2 hours time, because there's just so much you can teach them.
And Niels, you've kind of become sort of the forerunner in Assetto Corsa Competizione, and with you kind of had a different background, as you say, with Danny, but was there people that you learned from and helped coach you along the way? And now likewise, do you feel sort of that role within ACC?
Yeah. So also back then, I mean, I was a kid. I was just throwing time at the thing. And doing thousands of laps on the single combination.
It's funny, by the way, how kids do that and they're able to learn anything because they just don't care. Now, as an adult, I'm like, I have to learn. That's hard. But yes, I get your point.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I have to find the time and I have to say, okay, this training is going to be 2, max 3 hours. Then there's something else on the agenda. And back then I said, okay, I'll just drive. And then if I fall into the bed, then that's the end. But yeah, there were people doing a lot in the background that I think at the time I didn't appreciate, because somebody was organizing the team, somebody was doing deliveries, all that stuff was kind of invisible to me. It was just there. But there were also people who were already driving like in the very first month, really. I think sooner or later I became faster than my teammates. But at the very start of things, there were also, I think back on the first speed, we had telemetry at times. So we're just looking at like the progression of the brake through the braking zone into the corner, which it just at then was a very important concept initially to understand what I was doing there. But I think at the time there wasn't really a coach as an official title, so to say.
Would that have helped you if there was?
Potentially, could be, because I was just learning from the hot laps of the other guys. Looking at their inputs over and over again, trying to mimic it. Yeah, maybe someone who would have walked me through would have certainly gave me a bit of a heads up. Instead of doing 10,000 hours, maybe I would have been good with 2,000.
Yeah, you don't have to find your own way. Max, going to you again, who kind of asks for the help now? I'm sure everyone does. I'm sure your DMs are full of kids that are like me that can't figure it out. Hey, help me, bro. But is it just for beginners or experienced racers? I mean, you touched on sort of the team aspect of it. Is it aspiring pros or just people that want to improve you see more of?
It's really for everyone. Like I've taught people who are, I don't know, 5-6 seconds off. We're just at the beginning of iRacing, not really at the beginning, but like after a couple of months, because I always tell them, come back to me like after you did some laps on your own. But we've had everything. We've had people who wanted to become a pro who were only like maybe a 2/10 off me, and then it's really hard because you really need to look into the telemetry because you can't see anything on track. It looks basically the same, so you really need to dive deep. But overall, just yeah, everyone, people who do it for a hobby, people who want to be or who are more ambitious and want to achieve more things. So yeah, it's completely everything. If you put it on an iRating scale, it's like 500 to 8,000 iRating. You have everything from that.
And how often do you run into? So I've done some driving instructing in real life, and this is one of the things I think that I struggled with the most, is that you confuse your student because you give them too much all at once, or you use terms that maybe they're not familiar with, having not been on track before. How do you learn how to teach is, I guess, my question. How do you learn sort of your student and how to go with that?
Yeah, it's just experience. Obviously, you do the first coaching, and as you said, people get confused. So you just give them so much information that they can't handle it. So I learned that you just need to be relaxed and you do one thing after another. So we focus on one corner first, or we focus on one thing you do with the car first, whether it's braking, whether it's going on throttle, and then you just go from there. It's much more important if you have a 2-hour coaching session, then it's better to just focus on 3 things instead of 10, because afterwards you can only remember 1 or 2 maybe. So it's very important that you just stay calm and just remember what you experienced in your last coachings, and that's how I learned it, especially like in the first 10-15 coachings I did.
Yeah, and what about you, Niels? Because obviously you have worked with others now, and again within BS competition and even G2 before you switched over. Do you have the same issue that you got to realize who you're speaking to at times and giving that advice?
I mean, it's not just a saying, right? You always see where your student is, and then you pick him up there, try to elevate him from that point. I've had people where the conversation started with horrendous English, where I thought, oh my God, this is going to be difficult. But then in the actual coaching, everything was like very easy, and suddenly that person looked like, okay, he knows half the shit already, so let's give him the rest. And it's as Max said, I have the whole range of people. I have 60-year-olds just starting sim racing because suddenly they have time on their hands, or it's young people trying to have aspirations. In coaching, we had, or I had like 60-year-olds coming into sim racing because suddenly they have time on their hands, want to go deep into it, but yeah, they don't. Now they have 10,000 euros worth of equipment, but they can't drive, so they do get a coaching on top of it. And then you have these very young people, like Gregor, for example, 2 years ago came to me for coaching, and now he's a teammate. So you can see that definitely had some sort of impact on him, and he was improving really quickly. And then there's everything in between as well. Just people who have an intense hobby, not too much time, but the little time they spend, they want to spend the right way, so they do get a coaching to drive better.
And here's an interesting one, Niels, because I know you've done some BMW Motorsport M drivers into sim. What's it like coaching a real life driver who well, maybe not know, but you're pretty sure could beat you on a real track based on experience, but now you're teaching the nuances of sim? How's that experience been for each of you?
Yeah, I think first it's maybe the first half hour, it's like finding each other's respect, so to say, to acknowledge what he's doing, he's acknowledging what we're doing, and then finding the common ground, which definitely is there. And the most interesting part always is we just speak the same languages. We move the same way when we describe something in terms of driving. We use the same terminology. And for him, then, it really was about learning quirks of the game rather than the driving side of things. Maybe learn how a certain pattern on the game is maybe needed that he doesn't have to do in real life, for example, because things are still different, right? They're fairly on a high level, but yeah, some details just still differ, but it's not really a major thing. So he just really has to develop that feeling. I'm really just pointing here and there.
What about you, Max? What's the biggest issue you see with real life drivers suddenly on iRacing, and like is there one mistake they all make over and over again that you're like, oh, like why?
There's not really one mistake they do, but what's very different for them is that they are very open and very fast learning. So if you tell them something like do this different on the brakes, like it just takes one lap and they do it. So you can see that what they do in real life also kind of matches with what they do in the sim. They just want to be better, and they are just so competitive that they really want to learn it. So it's also very mature that they come to you and ask for a coaching because they feel that they are just a bit off, while other people are more like, yeah, I can find it myself, I don't need anyone, and then they just end up failing. So also to have the saying, I go to a coaching session now because I want to be better in sim already tells you a lot about these people who want to be better in the sim.
Yeah, fair enough. And do you teach everything, or do you hold a little bit back? That little last 1% for you.
Nah, there's nothing I'm holding back, because I think we should have equal skills in the, or not equal skills, but equal, how do you say, equal
opportunity.
Equal opportunity is a good word. Sorry. So I don't hold anything back. Why would I? I mean, there's not really something you can hold back. Obviously, if there's something going on with iRacing where you can warm up tires in a special way or something, that's maybe a bit too hard to learn. But driving wise, I don't hold anything back. Yeah.
What about you, Niels? You got any tricks up your sleeve you keep for yourself?
Driving wise, certainly not. No. I mean, as coaches, as good sim racers, we're confident enough, I'd say, to think we'd still be ahead even if we share our driving skills. Because in the end, we rely on our talent and the talent of the others not being as big. So no matter what we tell them, we're going to still be ahead. And certainly also I want those people to send the message to other people coming for coaching. So if I hold anything back, that sooner or later notice, and that would be the best for the business.
That dick didn't teach me anything. I'm going to another coach. Yeah, I think that's really cool. I think that coaching is kind of a skill on its own. You know, like you say, learning your student, the fact that you can have high level students. There's always something to learn every single lap on a track. Everything's evolving. It doesn't matter if you think you know everything, you don't. And then you've also got the new guys coming through, and I think they can benefit a lot as well. Whether they just want to be lap heroes among their friends, or if they want to try and give it a go in esports. Very, very cool. And obviously you guys come from different backgrounds. You got different jerseys on. Red line for you, Max, but Neil's BS competition. Niels, you guys are going to kind of be joining forces in the BMW family, though.
Yeah, I think we've been put on a challenge by BMW, really, to condense our knowledge into some nice piece, I guess.
Yeah. What about you, Max? I know you guys don't want to say too much, but this is going to be exciting. The different approach.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that unites us on the jersey is the BMW logo, so we're kind of still a bit connected, at least. So yeah, we're looking forward to help people, because I know how hard it is to start with any kind of sim, and I know that there's so much to learn, which you probably will never learn if you don't speak to anyone who actually experienced it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to join forces with BMW there and to see what we can do to help people out in the beginnings, especially.
Cool. Well, I know you guys don't want to say too much.
As well.
Teach me some. Oh, or teach Max some.
No, Max.
I like that. I like a good bit of banter between people all the time. No, this is cool. And obviously, we don't want to say too much, but it is going to be a video series coming soon, the BMW Sim Academy. Stay tuned for more information on that, because we will be releasing that as it comes up and gets closer to the date of release. And obviously, you two guys are going to be involved. Maybe I'll get to be a student and probably still not learn anything, because I'm a stubborn Canadian, but I'll try to learn, I promise. Thank you very much, Niels. Max, great to join you. And Max, obviously you're heading into this race about to come up right now, BMW Sim Live. What's your approach heading into this one? Bit back in the points, but different focus now.
Yeah, I mean, the goal is to have a second win in the row, you know, but obviously Spa is all about slipstream. Fuel saving is going on as well. So yeah, it's all about the strategy in the end, and hopefully a good qualifying so we can stay out of trouble in the beginning of the race. But we will see. It's kind of a lottery too, but hopefully we have a good team effort there and we can make the most of it.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, best of luck. And thanks, Niels, for joining us. And can't wait to see more from the BMW Sim Academy.
Thank you.
So there you go. Super cool that those guys talked about their different roads to sim racing, how they got there, and how coaching, even now, as Max Benecke said, you know, despite being Mr. iRacing and despite that Niels is at the top, they could still benefit from learning from their teammates and vice versa. And that there's always more to find and more to gain from different approaches. And also, as Niels said, when he was starting out, the countless hours that he was putting into it on his own, maybe he would have benefited from having a better direction, a clearer direction. You know, we can learn things on our own, but how do I not know I'm going the wrong way, you know, too soon? And maybe, you know, 10 hours could be condensed to 2, as Niels said. So very, very cool. And I think that coaching and having someone like that as a mentor can benefit everyone. And maybe it'll benefit you soon. Stay tuned. We're going to have more on the BMW Sim Academy, as we said. But right now, we've got to get back to focusing on why we're here today. It's the BMW Sim GT Cup Round 6 Spa-Francorchamps, which means we're getting at the halfway point of the season. And we're starting to look toward the end of the year at BMW Sim Live. To get into today's race, we've got to send it over to our commentators. We've got Arjuna as always, but he's joined by Ewan for this race. It's over to them. Let's get into it.
The road to BMW Sim Live has hit its halfway marker. For some, the path to the end of year showcase is looking clear. For some, it's looking increasingly turmoil. Welcome to the Ardennes Mountain, where the stage is set and the Ardennes plays host for round 6 of the 2022 BMW Sim GT Cup. Along for the ride here live on RaceSpotTV. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, today not joined by Lewis McLeod, but instead joined by Ewan O'Leary. Do remember, live timing and scoring available at racespot.wtf/BMW. Forward along with the best of the real and virtual worlds of motorsports through our partners at Timing 71. And Ewan, there is no better place to go racing than here at Spa-Francorchamps. Over 7 kilometers of track, slow speed, medium speed, high speed corners. This place has got them all, and in these 2-hour sprints where strategy always plays a factor, we're in for a treat here today.
We certainly are. It's an absolutely classic racetrack here at Spa. Some would say maybe overused, but it wouldn't be overused if it wasn't a great circuit. As you say, it's got absolutely everything. The best thing it's got, though, for us, is overtaking opportunity, and that's exactly what we're going to be seeing a lot of here today as well. So very much looking forward to this race and seeing how the next 2 hours pans out.
If you've been listening to BMW Sim Ignition, our pre-race kickoff for every single one of these BMW Sim GT Cup races, we thank you for joining us here today, where you've just heard a fascinating conversation between our host Matthew Sadikis Trivet, as well as Maximilian Benecke and Niels Naujoks, all about BMW Sim racing. Let's though talk about the road that we've been on so far, where we've still got to go, as we've hit the halfway marker. The first half of the season very much saw us focus on America. Other than our trip to the Nürburgring, we stayed on that side of the Atlantic. Today, though, starts our European Grand Tour. Today, the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. A couple of weeks from now, we'll go to Hockenheim, and a full month later, we go to the Barber Motorsports Park for Silverstone, and then a trip all the way to the land of the rising sun, and Suzuka will complete our championship hunt. And remember, when we talk about BMW Sim GT Cup, Ewan, we talk about it being the road to BMW Sim Live. Gone is the win and you're in concept. Now you've got to be consistent across all 10 rounds of this championship.
Yeah, you absolutely do, and the teams that have been doing very well at that so far, of course, have been BS Competition and Team Redline, but we don't really talk about teams in this BMW Sim GT Cup, do we? It's all about the drivers accumulating as many points as you possibly can throughout these races. Everybody's still worried, though, we're looking at that schedule there at the Barber Motorsports Park race, because that is the odd one out of those 10. You've got some huge race circuits out there on this schedule this year, but that one is a little bit small. It's a little bit unique, let's say, and it's surely going to produce some maybe strange results when we go there for round 8.
We've already seen what Suzuka will have in store for us. What does Barber? Join us on August the 14th to find out more about that. Let's talk to you about this format, though, for 2022. Again, like we said, gone is the win and you're in concept. Instead of points structure that pays the points out per team, we classify them per driver, though. We'll talk about that in a couple of moments' time, but we'll talk about the prize money as well. We paid out over $100,000 just at BMW Sim Live in 2022. And this season on the road to Sim Live, $42,000 shared across the top 3 in every single one of these top split events. Don't forget the 250 iRacing credits going to a random driver outside of this top split of competition. And well, we've talked about the tracks that we've been to. We haven't talked about the story of the races. We started on the high banks where Gianni Vecchio and Team Redline Blue made it 3 wins in 3 years at Daytona. What a dramatic way to kick things off we had. But then a trip to the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, where BS Competition won despite a 5-second time penalty. They carried that momentum forward to Sebring, where on the very final lap the elbows were out and Patrick Koltzmann could do nothing but watch as Phil Denez got on past. Then a trip to the Nürburgring, where the stealth-back Cover machine was back in victory lane for Matti Siepler and for Valtteri Alander. Good points on the board for them before last time out. Finally some redemption for Maximilian Benecke and Patrick Koltzmann, making it to victory lane in what was a dramatic race at Watkins Glen. And with 5 races done, 5 to go, this is how the point structure and the points standings are looking like. Phil Denez, Reina Talvar lead, but only a couple points clear of Chris Lullum and Gianni Vecchio, showing that consistency is just as important as winning races here. But But these are only the top 10. There's many more strong faces in contention here, and the reality is, with this point structure, Ewan, you can't just have a couple of good races. You need to be there consistently, and even though I talk about the struggles for Maximilian Benecke and Patrick Koltzmann, 2 podiums, a couple of wayward results, but always being up there in the pace has kept them inside of the top 10.
Yeah, I think that obviously the big difference with the win and you're in format now gone is obviously that consistency, but it also doesn't mean that a couple of drivers who have had maybe a poor start to the season can't win a couple of races and get right back into contention. As you say, using the example of Benecke and Holtzman, they've only scored three points on 3 occasions this season. One of those was only a 10th place at Daytona, so they've done really well to get those couple of podiums in, and they're right up there now, right in contention, of course, for BMW Sim Live, or getting there at least. And so, yeah, we'll see what this next couple of hours brings and who's going to be rising to the top at this stage. But 4 different winners out the first 5 races. It wouldn't be too surprising to make that 5 out of 6.
Let's talk about then our host for today. Just over 4 miles, just over 7 kilometers in length is the circuit to Spa-Francorchamps. It's a track that we've come to know and love. One point of note, with more than 50 cars in the field today, we're using the shorter pit lane, which is going to be a dramatic talking point. But you mentioned it earlier, Ewan, plenty of passing opportunities.
Yeah, there really is. Obviously, there's the obvious one up the hill towards Les Combes up there, and maybe a little bit into the La Source, and definitely the bus stop chicane as well. Plenty of chances to go through, but plenty of opportunities as well to just lift off a little bit and save that little bit of fuel. We'll be talking about that especially throughout the first half of this race, where everybody's trying to make their pit stop as short as possible. So what are we going to see throughout the opening portion of this race? Because after all, at the last race at Watkins Glen, we did see a runaway leader in Chris Lulham at the time. So will we see a similar situation at this time around, with one car getting away from the rest, or will it be one long line towards the back of the field?
It's an awfully long run. Once you exit La Source, you begin the plunge down into Eau Rouge through Radion, and qualifying is already underway. Just over 65 seconds left on the clock, and well, the times are close. That is no surprise. Perhaps the surprise is the name that sits on top. It is not Maximilian Benecke. He's only got 2nd place on the board right now. It's Lasse Bach and Fira Simsport Red that have provisional pole. Phil Denez in 3rd with the Bila Racing Team along him. Then a Redline trio 5th through 7th. The Apex Racing Team in 8th and 10th with RAG in 9th. The World Championship season has come to a close. We've got a smorgasbord of talent ready to go racing here today.
Yeah, we really have, and as you say, maybe a bit of a surprise to see the pole position driver. Not that Lasse Bach is a slow driver by any stretch, but Fira haven't been having the greatest season so far. Biela in 4th place as well in this qualifying session right now. A good, solid drive from those guys to get themselves onto the 2nd row of the grid. So a couple of surprises in there, but the usual names are all there. Redline Red, BS Competition, etc. There's actually 4 Redline cars in the top 7, so they've performed as you would expect. But yeah, let's see how the race goes, really. It's a little bit of a different qualifying order to some might expect.
38 cars are split by less than a second here at this legendary circuit. What do we have in store for us? Well, 2 hours of action, 1 mandatory pit stop, and a driver change. You're watching RaceSpotTV and BMW Esports for round 6 of your 2022 BMW Sim GT Cup, as we build ourselves up for BMW Sim Live, the end of year showcase for all things BMW Sim Racing. Qualifying, not always the most important. How important will it be here today? Because Lasse Bach has got the best starting spot of them all with a 2:14.065. He'll line up in pole position for today's race. Team Redline Red looking to go back-to-back with the 71 alongside on the front row. Phil Denez and Sven Haase, 3rd and 4th, the BS Competition and the Bila Racing Team Euronics. Luke Bennett for Team Redline Purple will line up inside of his teammate Alexander Thieber in the Redline Ice Blue machine, while behind them Chris Lulham in another one of the Redline cars shares row 4 with Kevin Ellis Jr. of the Apex Racing Team. RAG Jr. with some new colors in 9th, sharing the row 5 with Jamie Fluke in that 99 car. Patrick Heinrich and Tuis Tatala for Bila Racing Team, and Kova right behind them. Jordan Caruso will be in 13th for the Altus Esports with BS Competition alongside. Rolling from 15th will be R8G's Florian Lebiger, who was involved in some smorgasbords of contact last time out. He'll be alongside the groovin Frenchman in Maxime Briant. Race winner at the Nürburgring, Matti Sipolo, will be alongside Luke McEwen in that Redline orange car that was a hard charger at Watkins Glen. Luke Kikita for Urano will be in 19th alongside Quintin Violate for R8G. Martin Christiansen and Jeff Giassi 21st and 22nd, with Nicholas Rubelar and George Garcia 23rd and 24th, while sharing row 13. It's Govan Kini in the Flavios Saturino Esports number 13 alongside the late Apex Racing number 18. Thibaut Casabon and Daniel Lorenzo for R8G and Urano 27th and 28th, with Dylan Shrivens and Dylan Burst behind them completing the top 30. German Sim Racing 31st and 32nd, while Mechanic Racing Blue and the Williams Esports Academy team 33rd and 34th. With a smorgasbord of cars behind them as well. We got a big old field. Williams Esports down in 37th, one of the shocks, as well as Altus back there. But the biggest surprise of all is the 101. Watch for Max Verstappen and Alex Palou. Where else do you see Formula One world champions and IndyCar Series champions teaming up with one another? That's going to be a storyline to watch. Quick prediction, Ewan. We're about ready to go.
Yeah, it's going to be a very, very frantic race, especially watch out for Max Verstappen in the back of the field. He's going to be storming through, you would imagine.
Well, here we go, underway for round 6. The second half of the road to BMW Sim Life is underway. A great start from Lasse Back, who will lead the field on the run down into La Source. Nice and tidy at the front as they single file themselves out. Bit of a hip check there from Bila to the BS competition machine as they race themselves down on the run into first Eau Rouge and then Radion. With cold tires, you got to be careful. Denez back in front of Sven Haase. Nice and tidy up at the front of the field.
It certainly is. Lasse Back managed to get away very, very early there and strung the field out quite a lot, which helped definitely down into La Source. Helped to see almost no incidents at all as we run down the Kemmel Straight now towards Lecombe. He's going to hold on to his lead. But yeah, getting on the gas very early there just to string things out, it really helped everybody. They all run single file through there. It's a remarkably clean start.
Nice and tidy through Malmedy as well as they start to climb down the hill now, all the way up the hill through Eau Rouge, up the Kemmel Straight. Now they plunge downhill into the double right-hand apex corner, single file inside of the top 10 or so, with R8G's Lebigra and Maxime Briant, the two Frenchmen side by side for 17th position. Surprisingly, given the chaos that we've traditionally seen in these events, 51 cars still going in the right direction, not too much drama here to kick things off. It is a nice tidy lead at the front, but we do have, well, you mentioned draft trains, and as it stands right now, everyone is in this choo-choo train that Lasse Back is leading.
Yeah, you've got to absolutely stay in the front group as much as you can in these races, and that's exactly what everybody's been able to do so far. That's why everybody's so careful about battling. You can't let a front group get away from the rest of the field like we have seen quite often. This is probably the cleanest start we've seen this season, in all honesty. I know we've had some pretty good
low
ones,
bar.
But it's a very it's a very clean start, and that's why everybody's so packed up, so close together. And yeah, it's certainly going to keep everybody in contention, really, at least early on.
Believe it was Daytona where they crashed before they even got to the start-finish line, as ascend to the inside from the second of the Apex Racing team cars as Jamie Fluke tries to get past Alexander Thieber. They squabble. There's the carnage on the run into the bus stop chicane. It comes at the very tail end of our field. Alexandra Bada got mixed up in that one, but you see through La Source still fighting between Jamie Fluke and Alexander Thieber, but where the points are paid out, where it really matters, inside the top 10, they've settled down into that fuel-saving rhythm that we know is going to play the majority of the strategy for the opening 57-odd minutes here, because this is a track where you spend a lot of time at full throttle.
You certainly do, and the amount, if you can reduce that amount of time just a little bit, then you will be playing yourself into a great position. But side by side going on just outside of the top 7 or so, a little bit further back to Apex Racing team, who just draft past the ice blue red line car into Lecombe there, and further up the order there is a positional change as well, with Biela dropping down a position at the moment, but further back, this is where the action really
Oh!
is. My goodness me.
There's Verstappen in the orange. You can't miss him. Thibaut Cazelon with a slowdown penalty, sliding backwards on the run through the Kemmel Straight. But Verstappen is already up to 37th position, plus 13 from where he started. We did get the word from pit lane, Verstappen electing not to qualify, and I don't blame him for that. One, he's here for some fun. Why not carve his way up through the field? Two, he knows a lot of his teammates are fighting for points on their road to BMW Sim Live. He does not want to influence their campaign to make it to the end of year showcase. Still watching towards the front though, single file, with back leading from Beneke, Dinez, Bennett, Haase, the top 5, Lallem, Ellis Jr., Fluke, Thiba, and the RAG Junior car through the top 10. Watch for track limits. We've seen disqualifications before in these BMW Sim GT Cup races. They're going to have to be careful with how much they abuse the track limits.
They absolutely will, and the Spa, of course, traditionally one of those where you can really run the track limits very, very rapid indeed, if you like, through, especially on iRacing here. It is very easy to go across the tarmac and whatever and get those off tracks, get those track limit infringements, so you're going to have to watch out for that over the 2 hours, as there's a bit of a dive into the bus stop chicane, just a bit of an adjustment of line really for Luke Bennett, trying to avoid accidents as Sven Haase nearly sent his way down the inside.
They're starting to get a little bit more elbows out here at the front. Sven Haase maybe feels the urgency to get past and start contending a little bit further up. A little bit of argy-bargy back in the pack. Oh, more chaos through the bus stop. Rafael Rezag and one of the Altus Esports machines mixed up there. But the run up through Eau Rouge over the top of Radion is going to give Beneke the chance to pop out of the draft on Lasse back. Now remember, even with no draft, maybe a little less downforce being run for the Red Line Red machine, that will give him that opportunity to pull himself way on past. Dinez gets through as well, a little bit sideways, but two getting past your race leader. Lasse back to third.
Yeah, they're certainly a little bit behind though. There certainly seemed to be some contact down the straight there. Not entirely sure how Sven Haase managed to find himself in such a sideways moment up the Kemmel Straight there, but he just about hung on to the car as the top three were just changing positions there. Certainly a little bit of battling going on a little bit further down inside this top 10, and Haase for some reason was very nearly out of the race there. We saw this especially back at Daytona, a little bit at Road Atlanta as well. When this field stays so close together, the likelihood of there being a huge pack accident is increased dramatically, and that has got to be on the minds of a few in this train at the moment.
Give Max Verstappen another 3 positions. He's up to 34th and not losing too much ground to the race leaders, at least just yet. There are gaps beginning to open though, between 24th and 25th, 1.5 seconds that separates Govan Kini and Dylan Shriven. So the gaps are starting to build, but there's still that big old choo-choo train that now sees Beneke at the front of the field as he looks to go back to try and match the display that we saw from BS Competition in those second and third rounds of the championship. At one point we thought they'd be the first to 3 wins in a row before unfortunately things got unstuck for them at the Nürburgring. Let's have a look at the RaceSpotTV replay though, and let's see what happened on the start for the German sim racing car on the run to the bus stop chicane. Well, that's not his fault. That we know for sure.
Yes, there's absolutely nothing that the 4 car could have really done there. Get to see it from this angle. It's just a misjudgment more than anything. It's not a really outrageous attempt at a move, I wouldn't have said. It's just a misjudgment, isn't it, really? Getting too late onto the brakes, into the bus stop chicane on the opening lap. When everybody's so close together, you really can't afford to be making mistakes like that one, and unfortunately it's had bad consequences for that number 4 German sim racing car.
Another spot gained, this time on the PGZ Motorsports car from Max Verstappen, as a couple more cars seem to have been involved in strife, and it's at the top of Eau Rouge and Radion. Luke McEwen in the Red Line Orange car mixed up there. Some very big names being involved in a bit of shenanigans, a bit of drama. We're not even 10 minutes into this race. It's already starting to claim some big names. Let's have another look at some contact down into the bus stop chicane. This involves the other of the PGZ Motorsports machines, this one driven by Milan Rajkovic, and well, again, somewhat blameless.
Yeah, it's a similar situation to what we saw there. previously with the German sim racing car. I mean, there's not a lot of contact there, but it's enough at that kind of speed. And then there you have it, the secondary contact, and the two of them both in the pit lane now, I think. After that, we have already seen, by the way, a good 5 or 6 teams and drivers into the pit lane at the end of these first 10 minutes or so. We do often see this, though, don't we? In the first 10 minutes, things really do kick off in this series. Everybody just has to settle into the rhythm, really, and we will start to see that over the next couple of laps.
Do remember, fuel saving is going to be somewhat needed here. We mentioned it before, we'll mention it again. Here's a look at what happened to McEwen in that red line orange car side by side through Rouge. A bit of contact, a lot of air between them, and well, go Vankini again, just innocent victim, wrong place, wrong time. McEwen all the way up into him.
Yeah, he couldn't really do anything about that, and trying to go side by side through Rouge. I mean, it's possible, but is it necessary so early on in the race? Maybe not. There's a slight bit of contact there. When you're sent out that far wide, you're always going to lose the car, and then there's nothing he can do other than clatter into the field, I'm afraid. Somewhat surprised that didn't take out more cars, actually, but thankfully only 2. But a shame for those 2 teams to be out of contention so early on.
Well, let's hope it settles down, at least for the time being. Already see at least 6 cars have required a trip down to pit road at some point or another. Of those, 3 still running, so we will keep a close eye on them. Now, I was trying to figure out who that lapped car was. It's somewhat academic. A look potentially on the Biela car by an Apex Racing machine. Dinez electing to stay in tow for the time being, with officially now 10 minutes being done in this race. Let's see if it settles down into a rhythm, because I was telling this to you before we got underway, Ewan. 30 minutes of chaos, 30 minutes of fuel saving, 10 minutes of pit stop kerfuffles, and then 50 minutes of an all-out brawl. It tends to be the way that these BMW Sim GT Cup races work. And while we've had the shenanigans, yes, we've had plenty of, I'll say, strategy-focused driving at the front of the field so far.
Yeah, we have. There's been a few little exchanges of position, much like what we saw there with Kevin Ellis Jr. and Sven Haase, just exchanging places, pretty much going up towards Lecom there. But yeah, you're right. We do tend to see these races follow a bit of a pattern. What I will say, though, is that, as I mentioned, I referenced the Daytona race there, and this is turning into a similar effect with the amount of cars that are in the front group at the moment. I mean, it's numbering over 20 cars at this stage that are in this front group, this front draft train, if you like. What we saw there was eventually, about half an hour in, 40 minutes into the first stint, we saw a relatively big pack accident happen further down the field. I just fear that maybe that is what's going to happen again, and that's what's going to split the field apart today. Rather than anybody putting down particular pace or anybody trying to do something, you know, it's going to be down to possibly an accident that might happen that takes out quite a few cars, but let's hope not.
Let's have a look at our weather conditions for today's race. Racing on the virtual 1st of August, 22 degrees in the air, 37 down on the track itself, with some relatively strong gusts of winds. There you see the train behind Beneke. It is close, we'll put it that way. Verstappen will give you your frequent updates on that 101 machine. 21 positions gain into 29th. He's still only about 13 seconds off from the leader. I don't think you can discount him from finishing inside of the top 5 at the end of this race, but there's a long old way to go. And I mentioned the separation forming. Now it's between 18th and 19th, as Jamie Fluke will get on past Sven Haase this time by. Both the Apex Racing team cars now in front of that 451 as they charge their way up through the field. Julian Kesselhut shoved wide at Lecom in the big red machine. Another victim claimed here at Spa.
Oh, and that looks like suspension damage, quite possibly. That car didn't look like it was going particularly straight, and it certainly does look like there's damage on that car. A bit of an incident there, but as you say, yeah, Verstappen just going up the field. He's in that little second group. You might just be able to see it in the background of some of these shots. The top 18 or so are in the front, and then there's a bit of a gap down to the rest. You can just see it there, and that's where Verstappen is right now. But yeah, that car, is it okay for BS competition? It's hard to tell around some of these corners, but it does look like that car's not quite tracking straight.
Let's have a look at what happened to them on the RaceSpotTV replay. Kova getting past Jordan Caruso, 12th and 13th positions, swapping around there. So it was the 707.
Whoa.
You can try and go too wide through there. Now, I do think that BS Competition would have gotten away with that one, would have been about as lucky as you could imagine, but it was Tumas Tatler who was not really having any of it. You can argue that BS Competition were all the way on the inside, as there was a bobble there from a car coming off a curve of Paul Frere.
Yeah, there's more than a bobble. One of the RHE cars, I think it was, has gone around entirely there. Or somebody has, anyway. I think it was an RHE that went around entirely. Couldn't tell you who it was, but yeah, there's certainly a car around. Now, there you are, out of the curve Paul Frere. But yeah, it's such a difficult corner. You're so loaded on that on that left rear, excuse me, that it's very easy to lose the car. But we'll find out soon whether he actually got help or not.
Remember the margins that they're playing with as well. At this level, it's so fine as to whether you have a race winning setup or you have a setup that's contending to stay in the mix, as you were. Here's a look at the replay then. So again, it's going to be a bit of contact, you'd have to assume. Labigra, and it's going to again be Kova, you'd want to think. No, just gets on the grass, and a good check up there. Does get a helping hand from Urano, but there wasn't much that they could do in that situation.
No, there really wasn't, and the Urano car did very well not to clatter straight into the side of the spinning Biela car. So here it is in slow motion, just getting that left rear on the gravel, and as I said, it's so loaded there that any little clip onto the gravel and you're sorted. But goodness me, that was great avoidance from the Urano car, just to nip around the spinning BMW in front, and fortunately everybody else able to carry on.
New colours for the RAG team. Brighter livery overall, one side, their regular sim livery. You can see the spots of yellow as well for the Andretti Autosport DHL livery that, of course, Romain Grosjean competes with in the NTT IndyCar Series. Seeing that livery in the iRacing Off-Road Championship Series as well, where Quintin Dell'Olmo is representing Romain Grosjean Esports. Hopefully we'll see that car continue to do quite well. It's not just further up now where we see separation. It's between 11th and 12th. Tumas Tattel, a couple of moments for him. Sees himself drop 1.9 back from Patrick Heinrich's Biela Racing Euronics car, excuse me, with Max Verstappen down in the 26th position. I'm still amazed at how Verstappen has managed to survive seemingly with a factory condition BMW M4 GT3 car. He's up to 26th and has not really lost any ground to the leaders in front. Like I said, don't be shocked if he's carving his way through, looking to the inside through Blanchimont.
Yeah, just making his way through very easily, really. He's kind of given that position, and it's another one to chalk up. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be so surprised if the start was a bit more chaotic, that he gained so many positions, but maybe it was a little bit further down the field. But he's gained so many for a field that was so strung out from so early. We saw the start from Lasso back to going really early, and it single-filed the field out almost immediately, which makes things a lot harder to make up a load of positions all at once. But it didn't seem to matter down the field there. It maybe was a little bit more chaotic, and maybe Verstappen did just make up a load of positions really early on. But yeah, he's done a great job so far. And as he said earlier, not surprised to see him in the top 5 at all by the end of this race, with the help, of course, of Alex Palau a little bit later on as well. But we're certainly seeing this top 11 start to get away now. I said it might be down to an accident that there is a split in the field, and it certainly was contact between Kova and BS Competition that has created this gap.
It was the big red machine last time out at Watkins Glen that spun by itself and then was collected by the Williams Esports Razor car driven by Carl Janssen. So back-to-back bad races for the big red machine, on board with Kevin Ellis Jr. in 6th position as he rides behind Chris Lullum in the Team Redline blue car. Chris Lullum sharing with Johnny Vecchio, both of whom were at the Goodwood Festival of Speed this past weekend, where of course we saw cars debuting as we build up to a new generation, a new era of prototype racing. And of course it was in the interim between our last race at Watkins Glen and today here at Spa-Francorchamps, the new BMW LMDH entry was officially unveiled. What a car that really does look, Ewan.
Absolutely, all of the cars look fantastic, but the BMW definitely as well going to fit right in. and hopefully going to be competitive up there as well and winning stuff in the next few years. We very much look forward to seeing that out in the real world very soon in more competitive competition. But yeah, what an exciting time it is, both at BMW of course and in motorsport in general, with this new era, as you say, especially in that LMDH category, which BMW will very much be a welcome part of.
Maybe we get an iRacing sooner rather than later. Of course, BMW and Dallara are both very good friends with iRacing. Great look from up above. Through La Source, as you get onto the power, you won't lift before you then get into the braking zone of the Lecombe chicane at the very end of the Kemmel Straight. You can see those driver names on the left side of the screen. That green line also indicates the final of the points paying positions in this round 6 of the 2022 BMW Sim GT Cup, with about 20 minutes down, 40 minutes left for these specific drivers before they hand over to their teammates. And of course, that second half of the race will truly see the elbows getting out. Chris Lullum under fire from Kevin Ellis Jr. And this is the type of race, Ewan, where you don't make up 3 positions in one lap. You'll make up 1 position on one lap, bide your time, then another position, and slowly you move yourself forward. That's what the Apex Racing team are looking to do.
Yeah, they have been moving themselves forwards rather nicely so far in this race. That's been very encouraging for them. On board with Jamie Fluke here, who's had a decent season so far. Currently 9th in the standings, but hasn't scored any points since the 3rd race of this season at Sebring. So looking to maybe score a few more, and there he is. But as you say, yeah, just looking to move forward one by one. You're not going to take loads of positions all at once. And I think it's time, probably we talked a little bit about these tyres as well. I know we're 40 minutes away from the pit stops, but it's going to have been in the drivers' minds from the very start. How many tyres am I going to take at this pit stop? It's what's created a lot of the excitement throughout the second half of these races so far, particularly thinking about the Nürburgring race, which I particularly enjoyed, with the different tyre strategies all in contention for the win. Never mind a podium place or a top 5, all in contention for a win. Do you go through the whole race without changing tyres at all? Do you only take 2, or do you change all 4? Well, it's we're likely to see all 3 of them. Hopefully we do anyway, for the entertainment factor. Hopefully we do see all 3 strategies as more defensive moves and battling going on into the chicane.
Yeah, it was very defensive from your pole winner, Lasse back, as Luke Bennett was closing on the run into the chicane. And do remember the tidbit that we were informed of last time out at Watkins Glen, where Cova let us know that they do full race simulations. Driver 1 will do an hour, then driver 2 will get in for another hour on this in the same server, so that they're getting the full experience of what it's like with these tire strategies. They'll try, of course, the no tire gamble, they'll try the 2 tire gamble, or the 4 tire, I don't want to say conservative choice, but the choice that will let you push the hardest for the second half of the stint. You gain anywhere from a 25-second advantage with no tires to, at the very least, a 12-second advantage with a 2-tire gamble. That very much could be the difference. Lap traffic has not played a factor just yet. They are closing, but not closing fast enough. And if you look at the live track map, you'll see that other than the 1 bit of traffic that they've got in the form of that number 6 machine, the Mechanic Racing black car with Claudio Mack behind the wheel, who is doing some pretty quick lap times, there's not much to really worry about. However, when we get into the pit stop cycle, even though we're using that shorter pit lane rather than the full endurance pit lane layout, it is going to be a factor if you come in and you get cycled back into some lap traffic.
Yeah, it will. But sometimes there's not a lot you can do about choosing when you pit in these races. You just kind of run out of fuel when you do. And then you've got to be in, obviously. So, yeah, that could be a determining factor in this race either way. Thankfully, though, as you say, not much lap traffic around, and thankfully for these drivers as well, we're doing one at 2 minutes 17, so this circuit is a lot longer than what we've already seen at Road Atlanta, for example, where the lap traffic was coming a bit thicker and faster in this race, or in that race, I should say.
Forget Road Atlanta. Watkins Glen, we saw our fair share of traffic chaos. Don't ask Luke McEwen or Rainer Talvar about that one. Fastest lap of the race right now is in the hands of Jamie Fluke, and you mentioned lap times. 2:16.285 is our fastest lap time. You want a measure of how much fuel saving is going on? Jamie Fluke last time by 2:17.393.
Exactly, yeah. We're not running at maximum And that does also mean that we might be able to save a little bit more tyres than normal. Does that push it towards a no-stop, not a no-stop, excuse me, a no-tyre change, I should say, at the pit stops, as we see Max Verstappen up to 24th position now in this race.
It's coming. Slowly but surely, the Verstappen train is on its way forward. Stopping off now in 24th. Still now 10th. If anything, he has closed about 3 seconds on the leaders, despite having to work his way past cars, despite having to navigate his way through this chaos further back. It's remarkable. There's plenty of fighting going on further down through the field. Nicolas Rubelar in the Arnage number 5. A bit of a cursed couple of weeks for that 5 car. Running up in the top 10 at Watkins Glen before being pushed wide. And again, that 5 car has been involved in the wars, minus 14 from where it started.
Yeah, I do feel like Arnage's competition have had an inordinate amount of bad luck in this season. But yeah, they're currently what is probably the 4th group on the road, if you want to count it that way. They might be about to be shuffled back another place. We'll try and find out into Lecombe around the outside for them on the defence, and that was a very nice defence of their position indeed, and they'll continue on where they were. But yeah, as I said, they're probably in the 4th group on the road, really. We've got that 11-car group where it was 11 cars before. It's grown to 15 now. And then there's a little bit of a gap back to the group that Verstappen has just got himself in on. Then there's another group between him and this one that we're currently looking at a little bit further down. But this is the red line red car, or another one of them, the number 7 red line red. We've got 2 red line reds.
Not confusing at all. Not confusing at all. You've got Jeff Giassi in the red line red car, and then Beneke in the team red line red machine. Thank you for making our jobs easy. Question mark?
Yes. Exactly, and it doesn't help that the Urano car doesn't look that dissimilar either at a glance.
Oh, yes, Joop de Ligt has heard my frustration with those similar liveries, that's for sure. You've got the Urano Luca Kita car behind them, Quinton Violate, Martin Christensen, and the second of the Fire SimSport machines. There's plenty of strong names down this edge of the field. They're very much holding battle stations up front. It's here where the moves are forthcoming. Verstappen disposes of Dylan Burst in the Vendaval Sim Racing car, now almost up into the top 20. Next up will be Zenith and then the big red machine.
Absolutely, and the fuel-saving games that are going on up front is causing a massive concertina effect into these slower corners. So you see there, Giassi is able to brake a lot deeper into the corner than those at the back of these groups. They're a bit further up, because obviously Beneke is lifting off on the way in, and then we see a little bit more lifting off from Denez, and then more from back, and it goes on and on and on, right the way back to 15th position and Maxime Brient at the moment. And so the concertina effect, by the time you get to that point, is absolutely massive. And now we're seeing the groups come together just a little bit. It looks like we're going to see possibly upwards of 20 cars now, as Verstappen is going to try and make this move into Lecombe.
Oh, in front of him, bit of diving there from Fira to hold off the Urano number 92 on the run up into the Lecombe chicane. Verstappen doesn't get through for the time being. Can see continuing to put the pressure on is now Julian Kesselhood, who has a look to the inside down the hill. Plenty of storylines to be watching here. The, what's it now, 25 car train, I think you can probably say that, split by 10 seconds. We are very much in that window where it still is anyone's game. I'll say after the chaos at the start, it has calmed down slightly, and I think half of that is potentially just the amount of fuel saving that's going on, because still at the front of the field they are a full second off the potential that we really know they could be showing, but they're driving to a rhythm, they're driving to a number, and that's where the best drivers really do prove their worth.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's not that there's nothing to watch at this stage. I mean, there's people trying to get shuffled forward, and what is the perfect position to be in? Obviously, do you want to be leading the pack around this entire time? Probably not. Do you want to be second? Is it third, or a little bit further back maybe to just save that little bit of fuel? It's there's shuffling of position going on at the moment, even if it's not an all-out brawl, as you said earlier on, that we might well see a little bit later on, even a little bit of defence from Lasso back there. But there's even more side by side, a little bit further down, that battle for the final points-paying position as R8 Junior trying to make their way into that top 10.
I think we saw Red Line Orange getting past Zenith Esport as well, but there's the battle inside of the top 10 with Patrick Heinrich grabbing the final points-paying position. Tumis Tatala goes around the outside of the R8G Junior cars and will get it done. What a bit of opportunistic driving that really was.
Yeah, he saw the two in front just battling and thought, I'll have a piece of this, thank you. And around the outside he went, on the brakes very late indeed, but he did make it work, and he might even fancy his chances of passing Heinrich as well.
Nice toe all the way up through Radion now, basically getting the bumpers out, but RAG will block off the momentum of Kova. Here comes Jordan Caruso as well, looking down the inside. RAG stalling out. Heinrich holds on to 10th. RAG get 11th back from Kova.
Well, I'm very surprised that those two there, you saw Tattler just getting into the back of Heinrich and almost pushing him along the Lecombe straight there, but even so, the RHG Junior car was still absolutely fine to draft past, even without a draft on the inside line there, so that was a bit of a strange situation. I'm not entirely sure how that happened really, but either way, Tattler, after making that great move into La Source, has got to do all that work again here in a few moments' time, but you saw a few car lengths just opening up there just in front of these guys. That's the only danger really at this stage. Fuel saving game going on with so many cars in contention. These battles can very easily create a gap that you then have to close, and of course you have to use that little bit more fuel to do so.
Had a look on board with winner at Nürburgring in the form of Matti Siepela behind Jordan Caruso. It's looking good last time out at Watkins Glen for Kova, 1.3 cars inside of the top 10. But by the time the checker dropped, all of those cars had been involved in some sort of issue, some sort of shenanigans, including Antiahola's second consecutive race where on two tires trying to hold off those behind, he was turned around by an R8G machine. If Ahola's back in that car in a little bit of time, don't be surprised. The temper's flaring very, very slightly. Alexander Thieber gets past Sven Haase, who drops now down to 9th, 5 positions down from where he started this race, but the panic stations won't be settling in just yet. He's teaming up now or in line with his teammate in Patrick Heinrich. Yes, he may have lost some ground, but it's all about getting into the pit stop cycle in the best position possible. Maybe the Bila duo can hold on and anchor themselves where they are right now.
Yeah, maybe they've got something up their sleeve as well for that pit stop cycle, which is coming up in about half an hour's time. But it's not great news for them, I have to say, that they've been shuffled back so far. You notice the stronger teams, maybe as far as race pace is concerned, at least in the first half, of the likes of Apex Racing Team with Kevin Ellis Jr. and Jamie Fluke. You notice how they've been slowly shuffling themselves forward in the pack, while Haase has been slowly going backwards. That is the sign of who's looking strong right now, even if we haven't got too much indication while everybody's running like this. That is maybe a small indication of just how things are going as the battles continue a little bit further down, with Urano going that little bit wide and stacking everything up at the exit of Malmedy.
I think they tried to get past Quintin Violate, and Dylan Shriven's overcommitted, then got passed by Violate again as Verstappen has a lunge down the inside of Christensen, who might lose out to Julian Kessel as well. The charge for the 101 now sees them up inside of the top 20, plus 30 positions as your reigning Formula One world champion.
And current championship leader as well, indeed, in that championship. But yeah, he's trying not to affect this championship too much, to be honest, today. But I think he might well do by getting inside the points. Of course, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for Redline to have him there and take some points off of rivals. But it's they don't really want him, as you said earlier, taking points off of everybody in this race. But I'm absolutely not counting him out at this stage. And indeed, Alex Palau is not a slow driver either.
Palou.
So they're going to be right up there.
I got to correct you. It's Alex Palou.
Sorry.
No, I only know this
because
yeah, because I got this name all sorts of wrong when I first started saying it. Took me a while to get it right. The easiest way to remember it is Hallo Palou. I don't know. Stealing from Lee Diffie there.
Yeah, I don't say that or like that anyway. But anyway,
you don't like wow. Fire Green and
no,
Julian Kesselot continue as around the outside. Julian Kesselot, well inside, well outside becomes the inside. Parks it on the exit of the corner. BS Competition slide their way through after Kesselot's moment wide. Now only is down 7 positions from where he started this race. Left side you can see those movers and shakers, bit of banging on the run down, or run up into turn 1, I should say. Lights flashing from Verstappen. Universal sign of get out of my way.
Yes, or indeed I'm coming through, whether you like it or not, but either way it's not good news for the car in front, whatever it is. I do feel like the gap may be just a little bit too large.
Change for the
as
lead.
They go through, yeah.
Phil Denez, well, he'd been playing bumper cars with Beneke for a while, and now has he saved enough fuel? Is he going to unleash the race pace that he's truly got? Well, we're about to find out.
Yeah, I mean, it's a strange decision because personally, for me, I would love sitting in that second place and just drafting off the back of the red line car. But Denez has decided that he wants to take charge now. I would understand if we were maybe a few minutes from the pit stop cycle, he maybe wants to get in there first. However,
oh no,
we are a long way away.
Sorry, well, Dylan Shrivens, well, still trying to get back up to speed. I'm going to put 1 and 1 together to get 2 and say Max Verstappen and Dylan Shrivens might just have made some contact.
Yeah, quite possibly. Those two were running very close to each other just a few moments before that. So, yeah, that's... I think you might be right there, unless Scrivens went for a move himself over those few moments. But, yeah, we'll find out here. We saw this move from Verstappen a little bit earlier, didn't we? It's another late one. Oh, dearie me. It's a questionable one, I've got to say. Was that move really on? Was he alongside? Was the door shut? It's, as I said, a questionable one. One that will be argued about, there's no doubt.
One thing is, it won't be Verstappen doing the arguing. It will be Verstappen's fans doing the arguing. Watch on board here.
Oh.
Doors closing, late lunge. Verstappen clearly had a little bit more pace, so was willing to unleash it, maybe doing less fuel saving. One may argue that maybe it wasn't wise for Shrivens to be fighting that hard for that position, but ultimately you fight for what you think is important. Verstappen now sees Luca Kita, Jeff Giassi battling, decides he wants to join the fun as well. Will battle with Kita all the way on the run up in towards La Source, long way around. You see them battling side by side as Julian Kesselhout punches in the fastest lap of the race. Verstappen gets on through.
Yeah, that was a very nice move around the outside of La Source. I have to say the one into Bruxelles was maybe a bit less nice. Probably pinned that one on Verstappen in the end, really. But let's see. That was a nice move, though, around the outside of La Source. But he might find himself in a bit more trouble up the Kemmel Straight here. There's a lot of slipstream about to come up, and the Autos Esports car is not too far away either, along with BS Competition. Everybody's involved here.
That's where the team games help, though. Jeff Giassi giving a bit of a tow to Verstappen down the straight will enable him to hold off the charge from Kita behind. Violate, Kesselhout all staying in line as well. 33 positions gained for a certain Max Verstappen. Still a long way to go, 24 minutes left in this race. Now, with Denez leading, the question will be, does he have the opportunity to break the toe of those behind him? Gap up through Pouon up to about half a second, but still not enough for Denez to break away from the field behind.
It's very difficult to break away from the field, really, in this championship. Of course, we saw how close the qualifying times are. It's exactly the same in the race, and the slipstream anyway makes things difficult, especially at a circuit like Spa. So that's why I was a bit confused that Denez did go to the front. But what it might be able to do is just string this field out a little bit, create a couple of car lengths, and maybe just reduce this front group in size ever so slightly. You saw the battling going on a bit further down in the field. Still, officially, I reckon we've got 24 cars involved in this front group, but there are a few gaps starting to open. Jeff Giassi again is letting a bit of a gap open up in front of him. I've got to say, not intentionally, I'll add, but it is starting to happen ever so slightly back there.
Yeah, when it comes to Jeff Giassi, though, you'd expect him to let Max Verstappen go on through, and indeed that's what happens on the run down into the chicane. Verstappen's now right behind Maxime Brient as he continues to push the tempo here. It is very much Super Max time right now. Half the season still left to go. Max Verstappen, fastest lap of the race, a 2:16.202, about 6/10 quicker than Phil Denez, who has, we should note, brought the tempo up very slightly. His last lap, a 2:16.874.
Yeah, and it goes to show what they were doing earlier on now with those 2:17s. That really does show a lot of fuel saving going on from Beneke. Phil Denez may be fancying a little bit less, but Beneke is now going to be able to maybe make up some of that fuel while he's sat in behind the BS Competition car. But let's wait and see. We'll, of course, find a lot more answers out when we get to that pit stop cycle and we find out who's really gone long in this stint here. I do think those teams that we haven't really mentioned all day long, the likes of Redline Purple and Redline Blue especially, are definitely going to be one of those running especially long in this opening stint.
The lesson I learned at Watkins Glen is to never trust your assumptions. I thought some of the cars further back in queue were saving more fuel than they really were. The mechanic racing number 6 is going to say, bye-bye, I'm out of the way. I'm not going to interfere with this lead pack at all. That's what you want to see from your lap traffic. So give a shout out to Claudio Mack for being as courteous as feasibly was possible at that juncture. Sails on past, off the racing line to let the leaders fly on through. Denez again has been brought back in as they exit up the hill, the climb up towards Blanchemont, the climb into the bus stop chicane. Mineke's not letting him run away, Back's in the mix as well. And I wonder if pole position might be the least preferential grid spot to be in, because I think Lasse Back much more comfortable being number 3 in line than number 1.
Yeah, quite possibly. It all depends, really. I mean, I don't think Lasse Back could have done very much to hold on to those places anyway, as he's now getting dived by Luke Bennett into the bus stop chicane, although Bennett wasn't really that far alongside, so Back is going to hold on with relative ease in that one. But everybody's all starting to shuffle a little bit. Everybody's starting to get a bit nervous about those pit stops that are approaching. They want to be as far towards the front as possible, and so we are now going to start to see a few nervous looks into the mirror by a few.
See the concertina through La Source, fastest lap this time by Julian Kessel. It becomes the first to dip down below the 2:16 to 2:15.994. Big red machine clearly has a little bit of pace, bit of separation over the crest of Radion. Lasse Back not getting a great run, and now under fire from those behind Redline Purple in tow, as well as Redline Blue, the 2 Apex Racing machines as well. But Lasse Back will fend them off for the time being and should slide back forward right behind those in front of him, as Quintin Violate has managed to get past Luca Kita with not too much fighting. In terms of your expectations for this race, Ewan, and what we've gotten in terms of the on-track action, how does it differ from how you thought this race would play out?
I mean, it may be even a tad bit quieter than I was expecting. I have to say there's a little bit less shuffling. Some of it is starting to happen now. But I think, yeah, it's maybe a little bit quieter than what I was expecting, especially lap 1, which was very well behaved by everybody, especially considering the amount of cars that we started with today. But it is relatively calm. I can't see that staying the case throughout the rest of this race, of course, because we're going to get those tyre strategies going on over the next few moments, over those through those pit stops. Are we going to see? I actually do think the pace of this race and the temperatures as well today maybe pushing this slightly towards no tyres at all. I think somebody surely must try it.
Of course, it feels a little bit weird to be here at Spa. Today is the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car endurance race at Watkins Glen, the 6 hours of the Glen. We were at Watkins Glen a couple of weeks ago. We are here in the Ardennes today. And first and second, well, inches away from breaking away from Fire Red and Lasse Back behind. The gap had grown to about 1 second or so. Back's got to make sure he gets a great run out of La Source this time and closes on the run up the Camel one more time.
Yeah, they're going to start to be getting a little bit worried about that, especially Bennett and Lullen there, who are just sat behind him. We haven't really spoken about all day long. Have they just not got the pace to stay with those front two at this stage? It seems unlikely. They look to be just a little bit stuck behind Back right now as Eau Rouge and Radion come again. Are we going to see that purple car pull in front of the Fire car?
1.2 the gap over the crest of Radion, so it is growing, and there's the urgency from Luke Bennett. Look to the outside, now looks to the inside, side by side on the run down into Lacombe. Redline Purple trying to slide their way through. Lasse Back off into the grass. Redline Blue has got to be careful. An almighty checkup, but they all just about survive contact between the 2 Apex Racing teammates.
Yeah, there certainly was, and Kevin Ellis Jr. is now going to get shuffled back by loads of different cars, you can be sure. Here comes Sven Haas and Patrick Heinrich as well for Biela, trying to make their way round the outside of No Name Corner. Is going to be quite difficult though, and so Kevin Ellis Jr. will at least hold on to 8th place. But for me, Luke Bennett there absolutely gave a complete disregard for Lasse back on the outside line there. The two of them were battling well side by side through Lecom, and Bennett gave Lasse back no room whatsoever. It caused an almighty stack-up and all of the contact that happened through Malmedy and the rest.
Do you remember we have live race control that will be taking a look at stuff? If it's inside of the top 10, post-race penalties very much could be on the cards, but it has enabled Dinez and Beneke at the front of the field for BS Plus competition and Team Redline Red to get a little bit of separation from those behind. Let's grab a look at the RaceSpotTV replay. Let's grab a look on board with Chris Lullen. There you see the leaning on. There you see the checkup from Lullen, which was very, very heads up. And then Kevin Ellis Jr. had to get his momentum stopped in time. His teammate was unable to avoid knocking into him. Chain reaction cost Kevin Ellis Jr. a couple of spots.
Yeah, it doesn't look quite as bad from that angle there, but I still think Bennett is very much in the wrong for running Lasse back out of road. But then again, Lasse back is probably wrong for trying to take the racing line through Malmedy when there was a car on the inside there. So not everybody's 100% perfect in all of that, as ever. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely on Luke Bennett for me. And I don't think that's too controversial of a statement, really. Lasse does seem to be struggling, though, towards the end of his stint here. He can't really keep with the group anymore. We saw it with the front two. We're now seeing it with the two red lines that just passed him. He is struggling to hold on to the pace.
Maybe that's tyre considerations coming into effect. Maybe a little bit more light on the tyres as Lasse back in this first stint, a little bit slower. How will it cycle out after the mandatory pit stop cycle has played itself out? Driver change going to be required in about 15 minutes time. Jordan Caruso in front of Maxime Brient for 13th spot as these two at the front ever so slightly break away for Verstappen, also getting past the Frenchman Brient.
Yeah, another nice move into 14th now, and he's really closing in on the real bulk of the top 10, as the clouds really do come over very briefly there. But yeah, 14th place from 50th position starting in this race. It is a remarkable drive. No matter, that incident with the Urano car down to Broussel's questionable, as I mentioned earlier on, but it doesn't take away from the fact he's driven very well over this opening hour.
See a couple of people upset that we're talking so much about Max Verstappen, but sorry, but not sorry. One, we have we have a Formula One World Champion sharing a car with an NTT IndyCar Series champion. That's a storyline. Two, he's gone from 50th to 36th in 45 minutes and is in the leading group of cars. Three, we're here for some fun, and right now he is the most fun storyline that we have on the track, at least for the time being. 1.5 the gap between second and third. Beneke again on the back of Dinez. You can see the gap increase as they enter into the corner. That's where Beneke is lifting and coasting, saving the fuel and thinking about the pit stop window that opens in 14 minutes time. Remember, Patrick Holtzman and Beneke winners last time out at Watkins Glen.
Yeah, they've certainly got the momentum with them right now, and a couple of good results before that as well, or a particularly good result before that as well, where they managed to get second at the Sebring race as well. So they're starting to accumulate a nice bit of points now, and getting that momentum with them, which is looking good for them. So, it's off the road. Oh, dearie me, that is not a good rejoin at all. Arnaud's competition are very much on the receiving end of it.
That was about as bad as it gets from Vince Peters on the main straight. It was a weird place to have crashed in the first place, but there is no excuses for the rejoin after the fact. And we'll grab a look at that in a couple of moments' time, but just when we thought things were looking good.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's definitely on them. And the weirdest thing is that they escaped back to pit lane after that anyway, so I don't know why they didn't just do that on the left-hand side of the road. But yeah, certainly that will be on Vince Peters to explain himself, I suppose, for that rejoin. But Arnaud's competition in that 5 car have indeed also had to come down pit lane now with the damage. As I said earlier on, they just seem to have no luck in this championship.
carnage competition, although this time no fault of their own. Let's get a look at this then. So Vince Peters in the 145 through... Oh, okay, so that's why they crashed so late in the corner. A little bit of miscommunication, and then no regard shown for those coming. Lights up the rear tires, and I know Race Control only intervenes for things inside of the top 10, but that... He's very lucky he's not inside the top 10.
I mean, yeah, he's got to pay more attention than that. He's taking the normal racing line there when there's somebody clearly offline and going a bit slower just in behind. So, yeah, he's got to pay more attention than that. And unfortunately, Arnage on the wrong end of it. Oh, dearie me. And then another car gets involved as well.
I think it's 2 German sim racing cars that get mixed up there. One in that initial bit of contact, and the second, well, just trying to get out of the way.
Neither of them were their fault as well. They both got involved, but I don't reckon either of them were their fault. Vince Peters drove into one of them, and then the Arnage competition car kind of sprawled across the road into the other. Not blaming Arnage there, but they were just the unlucky bystanders, if you like.
Remember, left side of the screen, that green demarcation between 10th and 11th is that final points-paying position. So the top 10 will score points as a team, although we classify them as drivers. We talked about the top 10 coming into this one. Vildenez, Reynolds, Halvar at the very top of the point standings. Chris Lullum up there as well, sitting 3rd and 4th with his teammate. And now, well, bumper cars. It's not Daytona, it's here at Spa instead. Redline Purple getting a helping hand from Redline Blue.
Yeah, they really want to get up towards the front now and make it 3 red lines in the group of 4 up front, but this is doing his best to deny that from happening as well. The pace at the front of the race has dramatically increased from what we saw. We're now into the low 16s compared to the 17s we had earlier on.
Now, where did Matti Sieppula come from there?
Oh,
he's got the slowdown of all slowdowns to be cleared right now, because you saw him come straight out of camera left, and I think there's another car which is trying to clear a slowdown at this time as well. All sorts of shenanigans outside of the top 20, we should know.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean he was. Yeah, Kova have had a pretty unfortunate race, really. They've been driving well this season, but only one car inside the top 10, and that's Chancellor just inside of that position. Let's see what happened. Oh, dear. That was not their fault either, there for Kova, and unfortunately they've got a huge slowdown, as you say, for actually losing time there.
Although there are probably better ways to clear slowdowns than that one. That is for sure. Let's first grab the look on board with Jeff Giassi if we can. We missed the actual bit of drama there, and I think it was maybe just Matti Sieppula trying to save some fuel. You'll see here, tucked up behind. Yep, you see the car in front slow down. Giassi just doesn't respond in time, and then that is some rally skills shown by the Finnish Matti Sieppula. It
was, but yeah, the bit afterwards, as you say, was maybe less skilled to clear the slowdown in that particular point, but very unlucky for them either way to have to do that. In the first place, as this is all getting very congested, outside of the top 20, as you say, they've been dropped completely into this battle, which they really would rather have avoided. But yeah, it's all exciting battles going on as the leaders are fuel saving and going single file. These guys are all knocking lumps out of each other.
The other fire car, Martin Christensen, getting back past on Quintin Violate on the run down the hill in towards Eau Rouge. Well, one was going left, one was going right. They almost converged in calamity, but they survive. Up the hill again they come. Again, fighting outside of the top 20. Dylan Burst in the Vendaval car in front is 20th. Violate will have a look to the inside. Nice and tidy for the time being. You can already see there is visually a gap in front of Luke Kikita's Urano car. Violate lent on Christensen, who will also lose out to Sieppula. Just because you're not inside the top 10 doesn't mean Race Control is not looking at what you're doing.
Yeah, you can't just do anything outside of the top 10, as that's a late time as well, and oh dear, maybe another questionable one, but there was only slight contact on that occasion, making their way through in the RHG Junior car. So yeah, that move at Bruxelles, it's so people have got to make the move earlier. You can't just move in the braking zone to make the move. Obviously, we've seen a bit of defending in the braking zone as well, but it's very difficult to know how to call those ones. Questionable moves, but either way, the RHG Junior car has made its way through.
And to clarify for those watching for the first time, there is a mandatory driver change in these races. There's no mandatory tire changes, no mandatory fuel requirements, although realistically you are putting in as little fuel as you can to get to the end of these races. As few tires as you think are required to hold the pace up for the second 60 minutes. We traditionally see that 2 tires is a safer gamble than no tires. 4 tires, sometimes preferred. Kevin Ellis Jr. trying to get past Sven Haase, pinching him through the final part of the bus stop chicane. Here comes Tuomas Tatalo as well.
Yeah, this is going to allow the three just in front of these guys to get away, because this is very congested and a very interesting battle now. Biela down the inside of the Cova car that's making its way through a couple of positions as well, but they all do single file themselves out through La Source. The Apex Racing Team car there of Kevin Ellis Jr. I reckon maybe a hint of damage there, because it doesn't seem to quite be on the pace that it was before.
Sounded like they were playing some bumper cars over the crest at Radion. That white and orange machine, that's Max Verstappen closing on the top 10. Here comes the draft train on the run into Le Combe. Sven Haase is on the inside. Kevin Ellis Jr. can't do much but watch him sail on through. The second of the Biela cars stays tucked in line. The only change at the front of the train.
Yeah, that's remarkably the only change. The cars were all over the road going up the Kemmel Straight there, but somehow that was the only change in the order. As I say, though, I think Kevin Ellis Jr. is nursing a little bit of damage. You remember that little bit of contact with their teammates at Malmedy. Somewhat surprisingly, Jimmy Fluke is carrying on absolutely fine, just up the road, but this Apex Racing Team car is struggling. The 98 dropping possibly outside the top 10 by the end of these, or by the start of this pit stop cycle.
I did see a name that we don't see too often here, at least on iRacing competition. NetRex Grand Prix, potentially one of the oldest teams in all of sim racing.
Yeah, they were the only time I recall them actually being here was for VCO Infinity, which we covered here on RaceSpot. But other than that, I don't remember them at all. So, yeah, they're good to see them here anyway.
As Lewis McLeod loves to talk about the partnership between the Unicorns of Love and the NetRex Grand Prix team, something that we see during the VCO Esports Racing League's story point there. Not such a story point here today, though. There's Verstappen on the inside of the RAG Juniors. Verstappen got an almighty wiggle through the middle of Blanchimont. Now, Ozeril Jim held on fantastically, but will lose out to Caruso as well. Verstappen getting the elbows out.
He does like a move through Blanchimont. We've seen it already in this race. We saw him almost make his mark in F1 with a move at there as well, didn't he, to be honest? So, yeah, he does like it there. But that was one of the more sketchy ones in terms of keeping it on the road here. If you look at the way these cars are just wiggling going through here, they're not knocking off much speed there. Oh, and you can just see the two of them trying to both make the corner. I mean, it's not a very wide section of road, it's very quick as well, so you can excuse the car on the outside for just using that little bit of tarmac.
Kevin Ellis Jr. closer to Sven Haase than he's been in a while, almost bumping into him as they crested the hill over the top at Radion. This time, though, he's got a nice toe and will make it look nice and easy around the outside of Sven Haase. Max Verstappen gets past on Patrick Heinrich. He's up to 11th.
Yeah, nice easy move really for the both of them actually. There was not much battling to actually be done by the time they actually got to the first corner of Le Combe. So that's the way they would have wanted that to happen, and everything moves back to single file again as they try and chase on to some of the groups up in front. This race really has split apart a little bit more than it was earlier, although those front two pairings in the top four are just closing ever so slightly, especially down to the work of Luke Bennett there.
Yeah, no, you can't say that it's Beneke that's necessarily been falling back to allow the purple and blue red line cars to get a tow. Instead, it's really just been the pace of Bennett and Lullum that they've closed, especially compared to Farah's Lasse back number 2, which has dropped backwards now 1.8 off the pace of Chris Lullum. So it's a red line trio against a solitary BS competition zebra.
Yeah, I mean, Bennett has driven very well. So ever since he got through the Lasse back car, which I'm still questioning that move really as a very much a one that may receive a penalty, but we'll wait and see. the pace of him has been excellent, and it has been throughout the season indeed as well. That gap really coming down now, and he very much is within slipstream range with only a few minutes to go until the pit stop cycle really will begin. But yeah, this front two has now become a 4.
Sven Haase tangles with Kevin Ellis Jr. through the bus stop chicane. Now Sven Haase will be down in 17th at the conclusion of that entanglement, but it was a war that eventually broke out, and excuse me, it wasn't with Kevin Ellis Jr. believe it was with Tuomas Tatila in that Kova 707.
It looks like, with the way the gaps are at the moment, it does look like that was the case in the battle for what was 9th position. A real shame though for Haase, because let's not forget he qualified in 4th place, a great qualifying, but ever since the race really began he has been falling down the order. Let's see what happens. Did he give enough room there to the Kova car? I don't really think so.
He tried going deep onto the anchors through the first part of the corner and then tried squeezing. I'd argue 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Racing incident.
I don't know. For me, if you, it's a big risk to do that. It's obviously a viable one, going deep under brakes there and hoping that the other driver backs out. But for me, if you're hoping that somebody else backs out, then you've got to be prepared to be spun around as well.
1 hour and 2 minutes left to go. So entering into the pit stop window. The top 10, as it stands, is BS Competition and Phil Denez from a red line trio behind. Beneke, Bennett, Lullum. Fire SimSport complete the top 5. Then it's an Apex Racing Team car in 6 with Jamie Fluke in front of Alexander Thieber for Redline. Kevin Ellis Jr. in the 98 Apex Racing Team car is in 8th. Kova 9th, and Team Redline White Orange, aka the Champions Express, Max Verstappen and Alex Palou, well, plus 40 into 10th position.
Yeah, people were saying that we mentioned him a lot, but we would mention any driver who's plus 40 in a race because that's a remarkable drive in the first hour. I do question how much fuel saving he's actually been able to do here, and his pit stop might well be one of the longest in terms of fuel fill-up, might be one of the longest in the field. However, as you mentioned earlier on, he's just here for a bit of fun, really. Try not to influence the championship too much. Just trying to go through the field as much as possible. Helps the 10th position right now, and yeah, that's exactly what he's been able to do. Only 6 seconds off the lead as well. As Lasse back, has he come into the pit lane or has he gone off the road? He has gone into the pits before the hour mark.
Should be okay, although I am somewhat surprised given where he was running that he become the first to pit. You can see it's a party behind. BS Competition is in, as well as Vendaval, Urano, all sorts of machines. Now what becomes key is that Lasse back, whoever he hands over to, is likely to require a little bit of fuel saving to get to the end of this ring. For these cars, maybe not as much required, and maybe there's a chance for Beneke to take the lead here, snaking back and forth to the outside on the run into Lacombe. Denez will hold on to the lead, but all 3 Redline cars have closed behind him.
Yeah, it's the first time we've... Oh, as Jamie Fluke goes around. Contact with Alexander Teeb. Whose fault was that? Well, Apex Racing Team are going to be really disappointed with how this race is turning out, because now they've got both cars dropping way down compared to where they were. Kevin Ellis Jr. has recovered to 6th, I suppose, but Jamie Fluke goes around and drops well outside the top 10.
There's the look on board with Jamie Fluke. Maybe not as much disappointment as you'd expect, although you can tell that car is not looking too healthy just now.
Not much emotion there, you would have to say. It certainly would be if he feels he was wronged up there at Lacombe with the red line car, but that does make it 4 red lines in the top 5, somewhat remarkably. But yeah, either way, Mikko Gade, by the way, has gotten into the Fira red car, taken over from Lasse back. Yeah, let's see how long his pit stop was. We'll find out that soon, and how many tyres he's taken on.
Oh. Now, from that first look, it kind of looked as though Alexander Thieber misses the apex of the corner. Let's see if we can grab some better looks from potentially up above. You see another look there.
He's on the apex. He's on the apex by the time. I think Jamie Fluke has squeezed just a tiny bit. It's such fine margins, and he didn't deserve this amount of. Jamie Fluke has squeezed Teeb there for me. I mean, Teeb is right up on the curb. He's got the 2 wheels up as everybody's in behind. My goodness.
Beneke elects to stay out an extra lap, so he's been minding the fuel numbers. Denez leads in Bennett and Lullum to pit road. Looks like Kevin Ellis Jr. will stay out another lap as well. Here come the pit parties.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's in here, and finding your pit box is quite a mission, really. So, thankfully, everybody's been able to do that so far. I can't see anybody reversing. Oh, there's Alexander Teep. He's gone miles too far in his box. He even ended up in the one in front of his. He ended up in Luke Bennett's pit box there, so that is going to lose him at least a second.
Here's a look at the very busy pit lane right now. You see Biela's in. Verstappen's handing over to Alex Palou, so we'll watch now the charge of your IndyCar 2021 champion rather than the Formula One world champion. Dinez hands over not to Rainer Talvar this time. Instead, it's to Vasilios Belistiostis. Excuse me, that name has been constantly in my nightmares.
Yes, I won't be attempting
and well,
that.
Up on the tires, up on the jack for tires goes BS Competition, rolling Johnny Vecchio and Diogo Pinto.
Well, how many are BS going to take, though? Is it going to be 2 or 4 at this stage? So the red line cars not taking anything, and the fact they've grouped together is a very good idea as well, because they will be able to draft off each other and help each other as well. I think Fire Red, looking at where they are at the moment, they might not have taken any tyres either.
Nope.
Same with Kova in the 707. Maybe red line, white orange as well.
Yes, the only car to have taken tyres so far was BS Competition with a 2-tire strategy. Red line purple in front of red line blue on the run into Lacombe. There goes the defense from Antiohola, who sees Palou behind him. It's not an RAG car at the very least. Ahola will be slightly less worried, and because of that slide through the box, like you pointed out, Ewan, Alexander Thieber has handed over to Christopher Dambiet, albeit with a slight penalty.
Yeah, that's really much further down than he was before. He was almost trying to catch the front 4, wasn't he? And now he's dropped behind Fire Red and Mikko Gade, who's gotten into that car, as I mentioned. But Maximilian Benecke is going to be in at the end of this lap, surely, unless he's done some miracle. And then we'll really see where everybody is. Will he take 2 tyres, quite possibly, throughout this stop or not?
Benecke's in. Benecke comes in the 71 machine. Ellis Jr. will follow him in. You'd assume the rest of the field as well, given that they made it 4 minutes past the top of the hour. Will be cycling their way onto pit road. There are your leaders. 5.5 clear from those behind. And BS Competition, crucially, even though they may have a tyre advantage, 12 seconds back and have about 6 cars to carve through before they can think about fighting with those up front. Patrick Holtzman taking over from Benecke has got some work to do.
He certainly has, and yeah, we'll really see what the lie of the land, if you like, after these cars come out the pit lane. The top 7 all in at this stage. Are we going to see anybody up on the jacks, particularly looking towards that red line red car, as to whether they're going to go up on the jacks or not at this stage? The 2 are no. So Patrick Holtzman not taking tyres either, and he's going to take a nice lead over those 2 red line cars because of that extra lap that was done by Maximilian Benecke.
It's not as significant as I thought it might be. The gap is about 3 and a bit seconds. The surprise is Alejandro Sanchez right alongside with the 69 and the 70. The overcut working a treat. Sanchez was almost 2 full seconds quicker in pit lane than Diogo Pinto.
Yeah, and we know how good Sanchez has been in this series so far. He might not have the results to show for it quite, but today might be the day where he can pick up a really good load of points, as this is the problem for BS Competition just in behind. They are 11th at the moment. I believe they're the first car to have taken tyres, only 2 of them. Everybody else has not taken a singular tyre.
Let's give you that pit stop rundown now that we are officially past that one and only pit stop window of the race. Left side of the screen, you can see the pit stop times. Alejandro Sanchez quicker in pit lane because he needed less fuel, but what a stop it was for him, 39 seconds. Then you see BS Competition outside of the top 10, the only car to have done 2 tyres inside of the top 15. Then Biela Racing, the 451, is the second car with 2 tyres. Luca Wunsch down in 19th position. It's the first time that we've seen no tyres be the preferred option by the majority of the field. We'll see how it cycles out. Still a long way to go in this race.
Yeah, I think it speaks volumes about the pace of the race, especially in the first half an hour, 40 minutes or so, where we were running in the 217s and we were almost cruising along at the front of the field especially, and it ended up being the front 24 cars just kind of cruising through the opening portion of the race. It also speaks to the track temperature at the moment, which is not as high as we've seen at some other races. I think at Sebring might have been one of the highest. We were high 40s there, I think, and that really did put the no tyre strategy really out of the window. The Nürburgring, it was kind of a nice middle ground where we had all three strategies really at almost a perfect kind of operating window in terms of the temperature there, so that was a very nice situation for us to watch. But on this occasion, the lower temperatures and the lower pace of the race has really made the no tyre stop the preferred one by many of these teams. BS Competition sticking to their guns going for a 2-tyre stop, as I think they did in Sebring on their way to victory.
They did. And remember, at Sebring, tires, drivers and teams that tried no tires were hurting at the end of the race. Badly. Whereas at the Nürburgring, drivers that took no tires were hurting well before the end of the race. The gamble from BS Competition at the Nürburgring to go no tires, the confidence as well that they had, where when we asked them in pit lane, you think you're good enough? They said, yes, we wouldn't be on this strategy if we weren't well. The confidence was misplaced. BS Competition sailing past one of the red line cars. And we talk about real world names. Shane van Gisbergen behind the wheel now, that number 7, taking over from Jeff Giassi. It's a star-studded lineup for Team Redline here today in round 6 of this 2022 BMW Sim GT Cup. The gap between your race leader and that first car that's trying something different, 13.5 seconds. We'll watch from here. 51.5 minutes to go.
Yeah, some of the names in this race, as you just said there, we've got a Formula 1 champion, an IndyCar champion, and a V8 Supercars champion, Bathurst 1000 winner and all. Shane van Gisbergen, just outside of the top 10 at the moment. So, yeah, a real star-studded lineup, as he said there. And there's Alex Palou, just 7th position, just right in the mid-pack of this field here. Mikko Gade, though, continuing to lose time to Holtzman now. That gap over 10 seconds.
It is growing bit by bit. At the very least, though, if you're Redline White-Orange here for some fun, after starting down in 50th, you have gained 43 positions to be inside of the top 7, potentially stealing some points away from the likes of Kova, Urano, maybe an Apex Racing Team car, maybe a Biela Racing Team car. All very valuable on the road to BMW Sim Live. We'll see what the lap time is this time for Patrick Holtzman. 2:17.7 compares to a 2:17.8 for Diogo Pinto. Holtzman straight on to the attack.
Yeah, he certainly is. He's not waiting around for those 2 red line cars in behind to maybe help him along. He doesn't want any of that. He wants to lead this race from now until the end of the race. He wants to lead every lap, and he wants to keep everybody else at arm's length as well. The gap, I think the most important gap, is not to those 2 red line cars of Pinto, Vecchio, and indeed Sanchez as well, who's in 4th position. I think it's to that 89 car, really, isn't it? The 12.7 seconds even that is from Holtzman to Pelliciotis at this stage in the race. I think that is the most important gap. We've got to monitor that one. How quickly is the 89 able to close in? How efficiently are they able to get through this amount of traffic?
Kova, Antiohola past Mikkel Gard, crucially with a little bit of contact, but at least going to be able to up the tempo, up the intensity of the chasing peloton. 7 seconds back from those in front. Sanchez goes for the move on Gianni Vecchio, still side by side through Speaker's Corner. Vecchio bullies his way back past.
Yeah, he made absolutely sure of that one through No Name Corner. Not entirely sure how that all started, but it has allowed Diogo Pinto to just get away that little bit. Not particularly ideal for the red line drivers to be battling like this, but Sanchez does not want to let them have it all their own way. He wants to be on the podium himself and gain a crucial few points.
It's come down slightly between Holtzman and Pinto, 2.7 the gap now. It's grown behind with that back and forth, 1.3 to Gianni Vecchio and Alejandro Sanchez continuing to squabble amongst themselves for that final step of the podium, for the final prize money paying position. 600 to be shared across the drivers for that third and final step on the podium. 12.6 though is the gap back to BS Competition. You were saying this is the gap to be watching out for. It's not coming down very quickly just yet, but those tires further up will start to fall faster and faster the more we go through this race.
Yeah, they really will, as these no tyres begin to struggle. I think this is possibly the most crucial point in the race coming up right now for BS Competition. I think this is where it's going to be won or lost, as Alex Palou very nearly gets into the side of Mikko Gade. The two of them running very close to each other through the bus stop chicane. Now is there going to be a move into last source, because once again he's almost pushing the fire a red car. A bit of defence, maybe almost reactionary, but Palou makes sure of the inside line. He brakes late enough to make that move. Oh, a bit of a hip check, and he runs him entirely out of road.
Oh! And then the attempted rejoin from Guard pits him into Palou. Guard will hold on to that one, but that was a little bit naughty if we're being honest. Here comes Christopher Dambeats to get past Alex Palou, and the thing that is enshrined Palou as a perennial title favourite is his consistency. Losing out here is BS Competition, who's trying to force Johan Hart through the middle to get his way forward, and BS Competition is not just in the wall, but they're up and over. The 89 machine is in all sorts of trouble. That was asking to happen.
Three wide up the Kemmel Straight, trying to go through the middle. BS Competition, it was almost a perfect situation for them to dispose of three cars all at once there. It was almost perfect, but unfortunately it has turned into disaster. For me, Belaziotis had to be more careful in coming back towards Palou there on the right hand side. We'll see it again here from on board. He pushes the Apex car through. This is a perfect situation now. You're going to see the fire car on the left hand side. This is all okay. He doesn't have to follow the car. He doesn't have to do that for me. I think he's the one who comes across into Palou. We'll have to obviously see it from another angle to see again. Does he? Yeah, yes. He comes across Palou there, and there's no reason for him to do that, and it's certainly hit on him, in my opinion. Palou definitely does not go to the left there, into the side of him. Belaziotis has made a mistake there, and BS Competition are out of the race.
What was I just about to say? That the thing that has enshrined Palou as a perennial now title favourite is the fact that he's not always racing for the win. He knows that championships in IndyCar are won by consistency, and that's, you saw him backing out very slightly there of the chance to make it even more aggressive. Well, unfortunately that's a lesson now that BS Competition's machine is going to have to learn. Phil Denez likely not going to be leading these point standings when we walk out of the Ardennes Mountain and get ready to grid and go again in just 2 weeks' time at the Hockenheim Ring. What a dramatic moment that has just turned on its head the road to BMW Sim Live.
Yeah, excuse my shouting, but it was a remarkable accident and a huge moment in this race, you've got to say as well now, especially for Patrick Holtzman, who with 45 minutes to go has a 3-second lead, and the furthest car up towards the front has taken tyres. Well, goodness, they're over 20 seconds back, and there's no way they're going to be able to get to Holtzman. So it now really is a race between all of these guys who have taken no tyres at all.
So take a breath. 45 minutes to go. It's not a tyre gamble anymore that's going to decide the winner. Instead, it's a fight between three redline machines at the front and Alejandro Sanchez, who wants to spoil the fun. Remember, Sanchez, pole position at Daytona to start off the campaign, slid through his box before he handed his car over to Kevin Ellis Jr. That robbed the Apex Racing team of a chance to be a part of the photo finish drag race to the line at the start of the year. It's been a long road since then, but Sanchez has another chance to fight, although first he's going to have to get past Vecchio, then Pinto, to try and close onto the back of Patrick Holtzman, who is looking to go back-to-back, albeit with no race control intervention today.
Yeah, I mean, Sanchez will be looking for that podium once again. I believe he's already had 2 this season, so he's not too far off that top 12 at this stage, but he just needs as many points as he can get. I'll be interested to see how hard they fight it up there now, because obviously it's all about gathering the points in the BMW Sim GT Cup. It's not winning you in anymore. Getting points is really crucial, so does Sanchez risk it all here for those 3 extra points to get him into 3rd place? Because at the moment, I wouldn't be so comfortable making it to Sim Live based on where I was at the moment if I was Alejandro Sanchez.
I don't think, unless you're someone up there in the top 3,
really,
you can think you're confident. Even if you're Phil Denez, then you start to get a little bit worried. Whoa. Shane Van Gisbergen got very close to running into the back of Alex Palou there as they got onto the anchors on the run in towards the bus stop chicane, but they survive. No harm, no foul. I guess it's one of those situations. Antiohola has built up a 1.3 second buffer, and Mikel Garda in that Fire Simsport number 2 is dropped to the tail end of this train, although still inside of the points paying positions for a driver that is getting his sea legs in real world competition after winning the Skip Barber Racing Series here on iRacing, a fully funded drive in Skip Barber Racing School competition for 2022. Exciting times if you are Mikel Garda. There's a great look from up above though. Johan Harth playing bumper cars with Christopher Dambeats.
Yeah, just looking to try and catch that Cova car again, maybe up towards the front here. But Apex Racing Team will certainly be looking to finish in the top 5 here with this car, I would imagine. If you just wonder what would have happened maybe if they hadn't had that incident at Les Combes with obviously Luke Bennett involved, the Fire car, their teammates as well. You just wonder what might have happened, but these races are full of what-ifs, of course, and they'll be trying to just catch that top 5 for now, but it's a struggle at this stage. Everybody's got the same tyres on, everybody's managing with the same stuff, so it is very difficult to close gaps.
You know how Marvel has that what-if series? We'll have, hopefully at some point, Sim Racing's big enough that we'll have Sim Racing's what-if, where we'll go off into alternate realities and pretend what would have happened in certain situations. On board with Johan Harth as he rides his way through the piff-paff, the switchback chicane that leads you on that run in towards Stavelot, the curve Paul Frere. Still waiting for Johan Harth to join up with the rest of his team at the Apex Racing Team facility. Now that the World Championship campaign has come to a close, we expect the Frenchman to join the fun very, very soon. Meanwhile, further up, Patrick Holtzman is building a buffer back to Diogo Pinto. The gap has grown to about 3.2 seconds as they get to the line.
Yeah, it's continuing to grow as well. Holtzman is really putting pace on at the moment. Pinto, the fact that he's got Vecchio and Sanchez behind can't be helping him really in terms of his pace, but Holtzman certainly is putting on decent pace himself. It does certainly make Sanchez's life more difficult, the fact that he's got 2 red line cars in front of him, because you can be sure that they're going to be helping each other in whatever way they can to make this a red line lockout on the podium.
But how much can they help each other without letting this car from behind close? You can see Vecchio is again helping his teammate on forward. Sanchez has the double toe, but you can hear him lifting off on the run into the braking zone, not trying to force the issue just yet. Maybe this is the realization, the understanding from the Spaniard that I can't win this race, I could potentially grab second if I play my cards correctly.
Yeah, I think that's the mindset he's got to get into here, but he will also have one eye on the fuel meter. I'm sure that they'll all have it under control, but his pit stop was, I think, the shortest out of everybody's in the actual field. So I think he will have one eye on that, just to make sure that this lap doesn't run 1 lap longer than they're expecting, but you'd be shocked if Apex Racing Team made a miscalculation on that one. So while he is lifting off just ever so slightly up towards Les Combes there, they will have things under control. And I think you're absolutely right. He's got to get into that mindset now that first is gone. Almost if he gets through at this stage, I think he's still going to struggle to catch Patrick Holtzman with even 40 minutes to go. So he's got to keep his head on that and keep his mind on that second place. Can I get as many points as possible out of this? And I believe a second place or even a podium of any sort really might well just be enough to lift him inside that top 12.
Race Control will be investigating the incident with BS Competition through the Kemmel Straight at the end of this race. Not much else for them really to look at inside of the top 10. Ultimately, it's what we want to see. 3.4 through the bus stop. The lead for Patrick Holtzman. If you're Johnny Vecchio, maybe there's some urgency to try and get through. Remember, Vecchio won the inaugural race of the campaign. It's not necessarily always had the same level of pace as his teammate. You think back to what we saw at Watkins Glen, where he was maybe the slightly slower one of the pairing. See how aggressive and patient he wants to be. Mikel Garda in front of Shane van Gisbergen.
Yeah, I wouldn't say Vecchio was particularly slow. I would say Chris Lullen was faster.
Yeah, see that,
in that way.
I always feel weird saying that kind of stuff, but you know what I mean. It's the fact that at this level, if you lose half a tenth is everything.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Lulham stepped up in that race rather than Vecchio stepping down, if you like. But to try and put it into words, but yeah, he's certainly doing a good job at the moment. And this battle for second, well, it's hinting at maybe kicking off, but for the moment, it is a bit calm. We said this a little bit earlier, that the first half of this stint maybe will be slightly calmer than the second half, because when we get towards the end, things really do all kick off. But I mean, the lack of difference in tyre strategy today will just dilute that ever so slightly.
Getting word from, Mikel Gard. Now, Mikel Gard, has he had a technical issue? Or has something else happened? He is sliding down the timing tower that would look to be terminal for the Fire number 2 machine. What a disappointing way for the race to end. Will promote Valtteri Alander into a points position, unless there is a miracle from the iRacing gods that will smile on Mikel Gard.
Not the incident limit, is it? Or is it a proper technical? I'm not entirely sure, because we weren't looking at the car at the time. But I reckon if we see that car off the road at the time, it could be incident
You're right.
limit.
No, it is incident limit related. It was a disqualification for Mikel Gard.
37 minutes as well to go. It's not exactly close to the end, is it?
Right, and I said we might want to be thinking about that. I didn't realize how much we needed to be thinking about it.
Well, it is Spa. I know it's not as bad as it used to be, but it is still Spa. So it will be a concern, especially for those like Fire who have been involved in a bit of contact here and there. They might have picked up, it's not just the 1Xs, but maybe a 4X.
Yep.
Yeah, so that'll obviously increase your incident limit at quite a rate. So yeah, more than 35 minutes to go. There will be a few teams with an eye on it, and if you're one of those in that battle for a top 5 position, you're going to be especially concerned, because there's a lot of cars around you that you could have contact with, or they could have contact with you.
To be fair, though, I think this one was self-inflicted. Maybe there were other 4Xs that had played its part through the course of the race, but at least from a first indication, I don't think there's much else that anyone else could have done. Right on board with Mikel Gard into Le Combe, and you'll see here, just watch on the right-hand side, cuts a little bit too much, and 1 minute he's racing, the next he's not.
Yeah, that's fine margins. We always talk about them, but there were certainly fine margins going on there as Gianni Vecchio makes his way down the inside of Diogo Pinto. Interestingly, Alejandro Sanchez wasn't interested in trying to follow him through. I doubt they would have let him, but he didn't even try, interestingly.
Nice and tidy. At the very least, that's what the teammates at the front would have wanted. Remember, Team Redline, one of 3 BMW customer teams for 2022 BS competition. The other one, G2 Sim Racing, someone that you'll see on other platforms outside of iRacing. The third and final one, we had the BMW Sim Bash a month or 2 ago. What fun we had with all 3 of our BMW teams. 3.7 the gap for Patrick Holtzman, and even though Vecchio's now in front with 35 minutes to go, time is winding down on them being able to close back up. Because to quote Murray Walker, to catch is one thing, to pass is another. Yeah, it's a very famous phrase, but it still rings true. And for Holtzman, things are comfortable. He's been very harsh on himself after some of the races in these championships, and recently as well. He's been quite harsh on himself, and he is generally, but from what I've heard anyway. He certainly will be a bit more pleased with himself after today, hopefully, because he's doing the business. I mean, Beneke arguably has done the hard yards for him a little bit, but that doesn't mean he's got to. That doesn't mean he can sit back and relax for the final hour of his stint here. He absolutely does have to be on it, and he has been so far, even increasing that margin. I know these 3 have been battling a little bit, but the gap was 3 seconds as they came out the pit lane, the 2 red lines, and the gap is now approaching 4. So Holtzman has done absolutely what is needed of him, and hopefully he'll be a little bit more complimentary of himself afterwards. Just got word as well from the Apex Racing team that Johan will be in England as soon as his work permit gets approved, which I can talk from personal experience of stuff like that. It's always a fun process. Sorry about that.
Sorry. That's probably down to us a bit. Sorry.
I know what you're saying. I'm not going to say it.
We're not going to go there.
Yeah, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. 3.8 the gap in the front. Diogo Pinto now this time returning the favor as he tries to shove Gianni Vecchio along. Last time by was still a 400th faster for Holtzman in the lead of this race. So even with a tow, even with a helping hand to get past into Le Combe, Vecchio was unable to close the gap. Holtzman at front, and you're right, Holtzman has been somewhat harsh on himself in recent memory, called himself, quote unquote, not part of the elite. However, he is very much, with that drive at Sebring, for example, with some of his performances recently shown why. He is a member of Team Redline, one of the most prestigious teams in all of sim racing. And to better make a point today than I did during last week's Watkins 6 Hours, at one point you talk about Team Redline and you talk about Beneke, talk about Vecchio. Yes, they had other drivers, I don't want to discredit, but those were the two stars. Now you look at Redline, you've got Holtzman, Pinto, Lullum, Bennett, McEwen, so many strong names. Redline, especially here on iRacing, have been hoovering up the who's who of talent, and they have got a stacked lineup to back them up in these sort of competitions, Ewan.
Yeah, it's always an argument, isn't it, between Redline and Coanda, who's got the best lineup, who's got the strongest team, who wins the most stuff. Well, at the moment, certainly in BMW competition, Redline hoovering up absolutely everything, and doing a lot to win these. To win these races, and you would say that maybe they do have a slightly stronger lineup at this stage, but both of them are pretty strong, it's fair to say. So yeah, I mean, they have really been hoovering up the talent, as you said there, and I feel like as well, not only have they been recruiting the best drivers, but they've also been almost giving their drivers a level to get to, or giving them a platform to get to another level. I've seen some drivers get to Redline go as kind of, top names, but not one of those who you'd really say would beat anybody on their day. And they've really turned some of the top drivers into some of the elite drivers, to coin a phrase you just used there. They've really have improved some of the drivers that they've recruited for my money as well, and so yeah, that's another mark of a great team as well.
And they do it without an explicit junior academy program. The Apex Racing Academy, of course, back for 2022. Coanda have the Coanda junior team as well. Redline, just one big party. 31 minutes to go. I'm getting word from the Apex Racing Team facility that, in the words of their strategist George Simmons, BS competition likely already out of the game, with two tires eating through them a little bit more than everyone else. Although, having said that, it didn't sound like it was going to be an easy no tire stop, I should say, for anyone at the front of the field. So do watch for that. We'll watch to see how much they're having to conserve. Urano and RAG side by side. Veyron, almost runs into Joop de Ligt on the run in through Malmedy. Luca Wunsch will get in front of the 188 car. That was a little bit too close for comfort.
It was all very aggressive. It'll be interesting to see how that all started, because some of the driving there was exceptionally aggressive between the three of them. But de Ligt has managed to find his way into 14th position. These guys still a good 10 seconds and more away from the points, and probably won't be getting any today. But they're still battling it out either way, as Veyron makes his way back down the inside again into Pouhon. Let's see how this all transpired. 3 wide into Lecombe, which is always a difficult one. De Ligt is on a difficult line there, and gets a bit of a slight. There's not too much to. That was very close, but there's not too much to say in terms of who did what wrong there. In my opinion, it's just 3 wide racing into Lecombe is never easy.
Agreed. And yeah, that was too close through Malmedy. I'll leave it at that. So, officially, 30 minutes left to go in round 6 of this 2022 BMW Sim GT Cup. We're back in 2 weeks' time, July the 10th. From the Hockenheim Ring, of course, home to last year's finale of the BMW Sim GT Cup, where we saw last lap drama between the Valkyrie Esports and Williams Esports teams. There's a look around the outside for Elliot Veyron. Outside becomes the inside for the second part of the bus stop chicane. RG Juniors will get past on Joop de Ligt. Luca Wunsch wants to join the fun as well in what I believe is one of his first races as part of the Biela Racing team in that 451 car. Julian Kesselhut's teammate in that BS competition car. Felix Quirnbach will get on past the Zenith Esports cars. Remember, none of these drivers fighting for points outside of the top 10.
They're just having a bit of fun at this stage. I mean, there's so many cars in these races that you'd expect points to go down a bit further, I suppose. But the top 10 having points, it really does separate the good from the great in this series. And I'm not saying these guys aren't good teams at all, but they're not inside the top 10 right now. But as you say, just fighting because why not at this stage? Very aggressive move down the inside there from Luca Wunsch. So he tried to, and in his defence, Joop de Ligt gets straight into the side of the R8G car.
Well, I wonder if that was bowling balls there. I wonder if there was a bit of chain reaction caused by Luka Wonch's aggressiveness. We'll have to grab a better look in a couple of moments' time, but clumsy, messy. I think that's the best way to describe that.
I don't think he can be blamed for going down the inside, at least from what I saw on that particular opening shot there. But obviously we'll get another look and try and find out, we'll really get to the bottom of it. So De Ligt defends to the inside line, but Wunsch sees a gap on the right hand side.
No, you're right.
He barely makes he barely gets alongside there. I think De Ligt just makes the mistake of mirror watching maybe a little bit too much and gets into the back, or into the side, I should say, of the RHG car. You can see how much later he brakes. It's not intentional, but it just happens, really.
Yep, not making the corner. I take back what I said. I was trying to be nice to you. No.
But he decided not to be nice to him.
Yeah, he wasn't being very nice to Elliot Veyrod. That's how that one went. Watching the battle for second, still unable to close on Patrick Coltsman. If anything, they're watching lap traffic close from behind, and Alejandro Sanchez is being rather patient, tucked up behind two red line cars.
He is, and I think he has to be, because especially earlier on in this race when the gap was only about 5 or 6 seconds to that group behind, maybe 6 or 7, but if they fought for the entirety of the stint too hard, then they actually would have allowed 5 more cars into the fight. And of course BS Competition were there as well at the time, so he didn't really want to go for it straight away. However, now we are getting towards that final half an hour that we spoke about earlier on, where things do start to just get a little bit more exciting. They do begin to bubble up just a little bit. And so Alejandro Sanchez will start to fancy his chances. He's got to remember as well that he's got to get through 2 cars here, so he does have to start his attacking a bit earlier than he otherwise might. And so I feel like that attack is not too far around the corner.
He's still saving some fuel. You heard it on the run down the hill. Not sure why at this juncture he still is requiring to save fuel. Surely he would have hit his number already.
Well, let's not forget his pit stop time. 39 seconds was definitely shorter than everybody else. Even Redline Red, who went the lap longer with them as well, their pit stop was still about 41 seconds roughly. So I reckon they've kind of taken on less fuel, so that they've taken a big gamble, admittedly, to try and get in with another group and then save fuel with them. Once he is green in terms of the fuel numbers here, Alejandro Sanchez, I do feel like there's going to be moves made, but he does have to be careful not to lose the slipstream here.
He's also got to be careful he doesn't go over the incident limit. We've already seen 2 cars fall foul of that fire. We saw what happened to them. The Ultra Groom Racing team, Matthew Payne has just found that one out as well, so keep your eye out for that. 25 is the incident limit for today's race. And 2 cars have already run foul of that one. Top 10 update. You see Holtzman leading for Redline in front of Vecchio and Pinto. A Redline 1, 2, 3. Sanchez for the Apex Racing team in 4th. 10 seconds clear of Antiohola and the Kova 707. Behind him, Redline Ice Blue and Christopher Dambeat. Apex Racing team's Johan Harth. Alex Pillow in front of Shane Van Gisbergen and Valtteri Alander complete the top 10. Redline have shown up in force. 6 cars inside the top 10.
6 cars inside the top 9 if you want to make it more impressive. But yeah, no, certainly Redline have really stamped their authority here on this race here today. And they will indeed take the championship lead away as well. Actually, from BS Competition, Phil Denez and Rainer Talvar won't score any points today. They're 1 and 2 in the standings at the moment. It's going to be Lulliman and Gianni Vecchio who's going to be 1 and 2 quite possibly at the end of this one. As finally we see an attack further down in the battle for 5th position. Kova are going to get overtaken there, but they did very well to slot into line in front of Apex Racing Team.
The bar is low if you're Antiohola. He wants to just survive for 1 hour. That's all he wants to do. 2 consecutive races on tire-saving strategies in the second stint. Ahola has been turned by an R8G machine. Today, well, he's got an Apex car and a couple of Redline cars now stacked up behind him. We mentioned this a couple of races ago. We'll mention it again today. That new partnership that Team Redline has, not with Red Bull Racing, but instead with Red Bull, the energy drink company. It is now Team Redline powered by Red Bull and Verstappen.com Racing. It's not just Verstappen behind the wheel occasionally here for Team Redline, but it's Verstappen well and truly integrated with the outfit. Even during a Formula One race weekend, Max Verstappen will be found on iRacing using a controller to race MX-5s with his teammates around him. He loves a little bit of sim racing. To be fair, Max just loves competing.
He certainly does. And you got to hand it to him for that proper integration into the sim racing community as well. He's doing it for years, to be fair. He's obviously been a big sim racer. Obviously, it gets more publicised now because of the following that he has. But he's been doing it for a very long time, properly integrated into the sim racing community, and not like quite a fair few other real life drivers who kind of jump in for the odd race here or there and maybe just have a bit of fun, cause a bit of trouble on occasion. But Verstappen certainly integrated it. And Shane Van Gisbergen, I'd like to say, another one who's very much got himself in with the community as well. He's even organised his own series for a couple of seasons as well, which he won on a couple of occasions. So yeah, he's another one of those real life drivers who just love racing.
Shane Van Gisbergen and Nick Foster putting on the Apex Hunters United Endurance Series. You can catch it live on VCO Esports. Well, Christopher Dambeats got past 1 lap ago. 7 kilometers later, Antiohola does the same exact thing back to him. Drafts his way back up into 5th position. Johan Harth, well, you see how close he is to Dambeats. He knows he's running out of time. 22 minutes to go in this race.
Yeah, it's all going to start to bubble up. As I mentioned earlier on, these 5 are going to really start to battle, and Valtteri Alander might just start to home in here as well when they do indeed start going side by side and losing that little bit of time. We might see 2 Cova cars in this 6-car train, the 777 just hanging on to the back there. You can see it in the background. But yeah, this race is starting to get towards its climax. Just over 20 minutes to go, and the fights are about to get even more aggressive.
Holtzman clear. 4 seconds away from Vecchio, Pinto and Sanchez. He's doing a sterling job to just eke away any opportunity those cars would have to grab the victory away from him. Knocking on wood. One hand on the victory. He got to drive his way into victory lane. Vecchio's doing well to keep the pace, to make sure that Sanchez can't get a run on either of those red line cars. Might be in for a fascinating final 5 to 10 minutes in that battle for second. Remember, again, top 10 will score points on the road to BMW Sim Live. Only the top 3 win prize money. We hand out $4,200 to be shared across the top 3 teams, the top 6 drivers. It totals up for $42,000 in this regular season. Shane Van Gisbergen gets past on Alex Palou.
That was so stealthy, I didn't even notice, but Van Gisbergen was straight down the inside there, and Palou almost let him through, sort of, or let him have that one for now. There's no point in going side by side too much because you're going to let these 3 get away too far. But we are in the final 20 minutes and the overtakes will start to happen in earnest. Van Gisbergen, though, in that 7 car, has just climbed up the order a little bit compared to where we saw Jeff Giannis a little bit earlier as the 2 red lines swap places again. Does this allow Alejandro Sanchez an opportunity? No, he doesn't even want it. He's still lifting off, and possibly lifting off even more dramatically than he was earlier.
Trying not to force the issue as Vecchio will slot back into 3rd for the time being. There comes Johan Harth, now getting a helping hand from Antiohola down the inside. He will get past on Christopher Dambeats. Gael Valera will get past Alexei Nesov as well. So Apex Racing Team cars working forward with under 20 minutes to go. Harth now behind Ahola. Gael Valero is only about 4 seconds back from Valtteri Alander, and this train of cars do not count out the Frenchman.
No, you absolutely can't. It's often said, obviously, that you lose a lot of time in these fights, and we're about to see a lot of them. So who knows of those cars in the background there who could get involved? There is another Apex car and a Urano car as well, with Alexei Nesov currently driving just 4 or 5 seconds in arrears right now. So let's see over the next 19 minutes if they will close in or not. But for the moment, Antiohola doing his best to stay at the front of this train, and was a great help to Johan Harth there in terms of making his way through.
I love that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. It's as simple as that sometimes in these races. If you think someone else is going to be a better friend to you, You'll work with them as much as you can. It's as simple as that. Sometimes you don't get the opportunity to even work together like that. So now it's Kova and Apex in front of 3 red line machines. Valtteri Alander has closed now into the draft train of those in front of him. So it's stealth black car at the front, a stealth black car at the back. Race winner at the Nürburgring inside of the top 10 in points as we dip below 18 minutes to go. Patrick Holtzman has run away even more, now up to almost 5 seconds clear of this battle for second, and significant is that gap because of course it's unlikely that team cars are going to be running drastically different setups. The main difference, it's just the driver.
Yeah, and Holtzman driving on his own here, surely being helped by that as, Vecchio making almost a late move on his teammate there, trying to throw Sanchez off maybe, but Holtzman certainly has been driving well, and he's done all he needed to do here in this race. Beneke, as I said earlier on, went that lap longer on the pit strategy. They had that shorter pit stop. The overcut really did work possibly to a bigger effect than we've seen all season, and Holtzman then just had to kick the ball into the open goal, if you like. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's certainly his life made easier by the work of Max Beneke a little bit earlier on.
Still, this battle behind continues to form up and wait for the opportunity for someone to make something happen. Red line, ice blue. Christopher Danbeat, some points on the line that he wants to accumulate. Left side of the screen, you can see the movers and shakers, plus 14 for Team Redline Red. In a normal race, you think of them as your biggest movers, but it's that plus 41 that will draw all the eyeballs to it. And Max Verstappen was on the charge in stint 1. Palou has been a little bit more hesitant to push the envelope in stint 2. He's very much been backing up that performance, though, of Verstappen in the second hour of the race.
Yeah, it's hard to be too harsh on Palou, though, because let's not forget that he's come out among the very best in this split at the moment. I mean, no disrespect to the guys who are further down, but they are certainly not as quick as these guys that Palou is around right now, and not taking anything away from Verstappen either. But it's still a very impressive drive from him. But Palou, we should probably cut him a bit of slack for not making as many positions up as his teammate did in the opening part of this race. Yeah, I was just thinking a couple of moments ago, I was taking a look at the championship standings, and you mentioned earlier on how we've got 6 Redline cars in the top 10. We're going to have a staggering amount of Redline drivers at Sim Live, my goodness.
Well, it was almost Coanda versus Redline last year, albeit with a couple of names sprinkled in. That's very much how it seemed like the championship went. It's not totally surprising to see it this year again. Who knows what form the finale will take this year, what cars, what tracks will get used. Maybe we'll use 3 different generations or types of GT machines, a GT4, a GTE, and a GT3. Why not do that? Of course, the GT4 and GTE that iRacing has may be slightly old in the tooth, with a new GT4 car to be debuted and homologated this year for BMW. Never say never. Gives us the opportunity to race across some of the best tracks that the world has to offer. And I'll talk about for Palou for just a moment's time. Now, having actually seen an IndyCar race in person, and it being the Indianapolis 500, I give a lot of kudos to Palou for coming to the US, you know, after being in other parts of the world for so long, and adapting to the challenge that is American open wheel racing so quickly. I mean, you look at last year, it's great that we have the storylines of, you know, Elio, a 4-time champion, but the storyline of Alex Palou, a race-winning contender, was one as well.
Yeah, the racing he's done in the past is arguably quite different to IndyCar, which is very unique, isn't it, really, in terms of that style of racing. It is very unique, and obviously been all over Europe in the past. Went to Japan for a little bit as well, but nothing could have really prepared him too well for IndyCar competition. But yeah, as we've already spoken about, has taken a title already in the IndyCar Championship in his relatively young career. He is only, 25 years of age now, which is still on the young side of things. He's still got plenty of bright years ahead of him, and hopefully a bright future in this race as well. 9th place as things stand, just in the bottom end of this group, which is now numbering 6 cars, with the 777 Cova of Valtteri Alander just hitched onto the back of that right now as well. So when is this group really going to kick off out front? When are Cova in the 707 going to be really under attack? Apex Racing Team going to be kicking off that one with Johan Hart here. Can he make that move up into Lecom? Will he bother making the move just at this early stage? There is still 13 minutes to go, still plenty of time for him, and he still seems content to sit behind, as further behind the other Apex Racing Team car makes its way through on one of the lap cars, trying desperately to get towards this group, but I think they're just going to run out of time for that one at this stage. So the 6 of them run single file, even so, with 2 Covas, 3 Red Lines and an Apex Racing Team car just for good measure involved here as well, in what is probably the closest and most exciting battle in this field right now. We have got that one going on for second as well, but I really do think Alejandro Sanchez has got more than one eye almost on his fuel meter at this stage, on his fuel gauge. I know they don't really have gauges anymore, but you know what I mean. He is concerned a little bit about the level of fuel in that car. Just wants to lift off here and there, wants to make sure that he will make it to the end of this race, which is only 5 or 6 laps from its conclusion. Probably, oh yeah, 5 or 6 laps. It's going to be quite close in terms of how many we have to go here. So we'll keep an eye on that, and so will the drivers as well, in terms of how many laps they still have to actually make these moves. At all, only 5 tenths or so separating those 3 out front in that battle for second. And there they are, about to come towards the line to complete what is lap 47 of this race. Now, as the battles go on into the bus stop chicane, Shane van Gisbergen looking on the inside line of his teammate Christopher Dambeets, but not making any decisive move.
11.5 minutes to go, and Ewan, I mean, your first time here on a BMW SIM GT Cup race, you haven't seen it all. I think you've been treated to something a little bit calmer, which is saying something given what we've seen so far today.
I'm disappointed a little bit, because we've seen some cracking. I would have loved to have been on that Nürburgring race, I've got to be honest. I really love that race, watching from the sidelines. So disappointed not to be on that one, but no, you can't complain. It's been a decent race nevertheless, if not the most exciting this season, as the battles now may finally kick off with only 10 minutes to go. We have waited quite a long time for these fights, and now they're finally coming, but Redline are trying to exchange positions here in this battle for second without letting Alejandro Sanchez in on it, and it's becoming more and more tricky as this race winds down.
Van Gisbergen gets in front of Dambeets for 7th as well. That might be crucial for those actually fighting for those points to get to BMW Sim Live. 7 seconds, the gap that Patrick Holtzman has. They continue to fight for second. It opens up the gap to the lead. And now you saw Alejandro Sanchez. Some intent starting to form for the Spaniard as we close our way into the final 4, maybe 5 laps of this race. It's going to be tricky. If he wants to get past, he's going to maybe have to try a sneak attack.
He is. I think those fuel concerns are gone now. I was saying literally 2 minutes ago that I still thought he was concerned on fuel, but that does not seem to be the case anymore. He's a lot closer to the back of those red line cars, and he's even trying some moves now as well. You can see him using up some of those final off-tracks maybe as well, with the incident limit maybe not a concern for him. He looks, out of these 3, he actually looks like possibly the fastest driver, and maybe the driver with the least to lose at the moment. Alejandro Sanchez wants every single point he can get from this race. The 2 third places he's had so far, not enough for him. He wants maybe a little bit more today.
Do remember, Sanchez needs to start getting points on the board. We'll go aggressive with Diogo Pinto, the 2-door with one another on the run into the bus stop chicane. They survive, but the drama and the intensity is starting to rise here. Battle for second, well, it might as well be the battle to get to BMW Sim Live. They're fighting that hard. Valtteri Alander has gotten past Alex Palou further in the field.
Yeah, that wasn't too much of an argument on that one, but I think with that move there, Sanchez might have limited himself to third unless he can get through on Pinto very quickly and really start making inroads into Gianni Vecchio here, because that gap is a second already. and there's only 5 laps to go, including this one right now. Up towards the camel straight again, and is the move going to come at Lecombe? It's going to have to for Alejandro Sanchez, but he's not going to get any help from Gianni Vecchio. Of course he isn't, because the red line teammates are helping each other in whatever way they can. Diogo Pinto, though, tucks in behind. He realises that battling side by side here, it might not be the smartest choice. It might end up with them both off the road. So he drops into 4th, hoping he can come back later.
He didn't, Matt. You saw the speed that Sanchez had, not just through the camel, but up through Eau Rouge over the top of Radion as well. Sanchez now splits the red line drivers onto the final step of the podium. One more spot to take, potentially, as he closes on Gianni Vecchio in front of him. Further back, it's a 3-car fight for 5th position. Shane van Gisbergen has been quietly working his way forward, now on the back of the Frenchman, Johan Harth.
Yeah, he has. We've not spoken too much about Van Gisbergen or Jeff Giannis in the opening part of the race.
Sorry, I'm going to correct you.
Sorry, why do I keep getting that wrong? Sorry to him. Anyway, Shane van Gisbergen is 7th at the minute. As I said earlier, just stealthily making his way through this group. We've not really spoken about him too much at all. Making his way, into 7th place now, and he actually looks very strong on the back of Johan Harth at the moment, who is going to have one eye in his mirror right now.
So there's look on board with the Frenchman, working vigorously at that wheel, I tell you. More looking in the rearview mirror than he is looking forward right now. Look how close Shane van Gisbergen is as they come in towards Blanchimont. Too far behind to have a look through the fast-sweeping left-hander, but if you can carry that momentum, maybe an opportunity in way around. Harth almost runs into the back of Antiohola, but that was calculated. He holds on for the time being.
Yeah, I really thought Harth was going to find himself into the back of the Cova car there. He was on the defence, and he can very easily brake too late and clutter into someone in front of you by doing just that. As we've got the other Apex car now, not under pressure, this time on the attack.
And can Sanchez work his way to 2nd, snaking back and forth? Goes Gianni Vecchio as they work onto the camel. Now Vecchio will try and fade left to squeeze Sanchez into the braking zone of Lecombe. Sanchez is already in front though, will sweep around the outside, and Sanchez has waited until the final 6 minutes of the race. He's finally up to 2nd with 6 minutes left to play.
This has been perfectly calculated by the 98 team, but the straight line speed on that car as well is very... as 2 cars hit the incident limit exactly at the same time.
So for Cova's 777 with Valtteri Alander and Christopher Dambeat, in the blink of an eye, they're disqualified. Give points to Gael Valero and Alexei Nesov. My, oh my, the final stages of this race, and they really are starting to get heated up.
And you've got to wonder as well, who else is concerned in these final 5 minutes? We're really getting down to the end now. There's been a lot going on. It's very easy to get the off tracks at this circuit. Who else has got one eye on the incident limit? Who else is concerned about hitting that maximum? We've got to, there's going to be some people being very careful, you'd imagine, through these final moments, especially if you're looking to gain enough points to go to Sim Live.
So let's start with a look at Van Gisbergen with the elbows out, bundling Johan Harth out of the way. That enables Christopher Dambeat to have a look down low and get on pass. But it's going to be on the camel again where there's drama. And this time it's going to be between that black stealth machine behind Harth and the red line ice blue car. So over the top of the hill, nice and tidy they look. But what happens here? How does Valtteri Alander get mixed up in all of this?
Yeah, the Apex cars, by the way, so fast in a straight line. You see them cruise up to the back here, but what happens to the Cova and the ice blue cars? Oh my goodness me, there we are. There's the contact, and there's the disqualification, the 2 of them out. By the way, the 99 car has been off somewhere because they're now down in 13th position, promoting BS Competition into the top 10.
Yeah, what is going on at the end of this race? It's as simple as that, a question. 4 minutes left to go, should be 2, maybe 3 laps left. Johan Harth is down in 13th, like Ewan pointed out. His teammate Sanchez, though, seems to have enough speed in a straight line to be able to hold off the charge from behind. Running a little bit less wing, it's paying dividends here right now. Yeah,
and Autos Esports, by the way, in the fringe of the top 10, maybe going to get a point today. I'm not entirely sure. I don't recall them getting points yet this season. I'm not entirely sure if that's true. But yeah, I mean, they're on the fringes of that right now. Certainly, we expected it to come maybe a bit earlier, but the final moments of these races are always chaotic.
Let's take a look at what happened to the Frenchman Johan Harth then. In towards that Stavlo complex, just loses it by himself, pushing a little too hard.
Yeah, rare solo mistake, and he absolutely does not know whether to move or stay still. Was very careful on the rejoin there, especially because his teammates in the 97 were coming up there. But it was all kicked off by Shane van Gisbergen, wasn't it, really, down at La Source? And I have to say, that was a very much a, I don't know how to call it, but he was nowhere near the apex, steaming down the inside of the apex car, and it probably at fault for that incident there. They may well receive a little penalty for that one, and unfortunately it has resulted in the downfall of Hart in the end, because they're not going to score any points today.
It does give points to the big red machine after being off the track earlier. Felix Kornbach and Julian Kesselhood have done a good job for that 90 to wrap up at least and recover a couple of championship points, 1 or 2 to each of them. 2 laps to go then, with 2 minutes and 40 seconds left on the clock, as Holtzman well and truly clear of the field. The battle for second's the one to watch, and you think with the straight line speed, Sanchez should be able to hold off Vecchio and Pinto behind.
Yeah, not just the straight line speed, but the general pace of that Apex car at the moment. Sanchez is flying as things stand, and once he's done his fuel saving, he's absolutely been on it. So look at that gap now. He's weaving around already, trying to deny Gianni Vecchio the slipstream up the hill through Eau Rouge and Radion. Are they going to be able to make any inroads in those 2 red line cars? I really doubt it. They're definitely not going to be able to make any move into Lecombe here. Far too far back. But is the slipstream enough to kind of keep them there? Yeah, there's no way, even if they're close enough, that they've got to be so close to make that move. The Apex cars are rockets in the straight line today.
I love as well when you get the setup differential playing a factor, because it means you've got something to be thinking about when you're building your car for the event. Battle for those final points paying positions. Alexei Nesov in front of Felix Kornbach, but Simona Maria Marcheno, the feisty Italian, wants to try and get some points on the board for Altus as well. No move just yet, but with 2 laps to go, this is where those final points will be handed out. Andre Melcher's in front of Luca Wunsch, a little too far back to join this fun.
Yeah, it's all over the final couple of points paying positions in this order. And so there's going to be a lot of fighting for this one, because none of these teams really have scored many points so far. None of these drivers, I should say, have scored many points so far, because it is down to driver versus driver, as Alexei Nesov really is using up his off-tracks there.
You've got them, might as well use them, as long as you've got enough buffer in case there is a little bit of contact between you and those around you. Do
you remember the old curb hops at the Clipsal 500 and V8 Supercars? People were just at the end of the race just ignoring the first chicane because they'd not got any hops yet.
Racing, maximum advantage from what you can get. The gap between Vecchio and Sanchez has opened up to over a full second. That's not going to change, but coming to take the white flag is Patrick Holtzman. 1 lap to go for Redline Red to go back-to-back in this BMW SIM GT Cup.
Yeah, and what a drive it's been from Maximilian Benecke and Patrick Holtzman, especially in the second half of the race. They've been completely unchallenged, but a very calm and considered race that overcut throughout the pit stop cycle has won them this race, and they're really putting themselves up towards the front in these standings now. There would have been a little bit of concern after the first couple of rounds that they'd only scored 1 point and things were not going their way, but now they really do have quite a lot of points on the board and look like Holtzman and Benecke are going to be sending themselves to Sim Live later on this year.
Still got some ways to go, but it is indeed looking like it's trending in that direction. Behind them, the battle to watch inside of the top 10 with Vecchio and Pinto very much holding stations for now is between Urano, Altus and BS Competition. Altus in front of the big red machine. Will it change around as they climb the hill for the final time today? Simona Maria Marcheno is on the charge and looking to the outside of Alexei Nesov. Felix Kornbach trying to pick which lane he wants to follow in, inside or outside. Marcheno's not getting in front. Nesov's going to be able to try and defend this one on the inside, side by side. They survive the first part. Nesov loses out.
Yeah, contact between the two of them, wheel-to-wheel contact as well, which really didn't help Nesov. Let's hope he doesn't have suspension damage from that, because if you hit in the wrong way, it can happen, but not likely, as down the inside there, that was Andre Melchers making a last gasp move to maybe grab a point.
Where did Melchers come from? He's still got to get in front of Nesov, who is limping around, very much pushing the limits again through that downhill left-hander on the run into Pujon, but the gap evaporated behind the trio who were fighting. Surely they weren't fighting that much to bring in those behind. But again, as Patrick Holtzman rounds himself through Blanchimont, it's jubilation for Team Redline. What a difficult start to this campaign they had. Second at Sebring, winners last time out, and winners again in round 6 in the Ardennes Mountain. Patrick Holtzman and Maximilian Benecke win at the BMW SIM GT Cup.
And a very deserved win it is. What a day for Redline as well. 3rd and 4th with Johnny Vecchio and Diogo Pinto having a battle towards the line, but they do finish in that 3rd and 4th position with all of those cars still inside. It's going to be 5 inside the top 10 by the end of this race. 5 indeed inside the top 7. A remarkable day for the whole team.
And a bit of shuffling at the back. Andre Melchers does not grab a points position. Felix Quirnbach, a big loser. He drops the 16th at the end of this race. All sorts of shenanigans on the final lap. Alejandro Sanchez tried, but he did not have enough for Patrick Holtzman and for Maximilian Benecke here today. In a season that does not reward winning, it took a while for this Redline Red team to get to the front of the field, but it looks like they are going to be difficult to displace from the very front. Well, your first time, Ewan, on a BMW SIM GT Cup race. What did you think about it? How much fun did you have? Are we going to try and replace Lewis McLeod before we go racing in a couple of weeks' time?
I think everybody at home is going to be glad to know that Lewis will be back next time. But no, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been great to be here, yeah, it's been great racing once again. I've enjoyed watching them from the sidelines as well beforehand. So yeah, I look forward to seeing what's going to happen throughout the rest of the season, to be honest, because it's shaping up very nicely before we get to our finale at the end of the year.
We will get the final couple of cars across the line. Remember, $42,000 paid out in the regular season for BMW SIM GT Cup competition. We're paying out, hopefully, if it's anything like last year, almost more than $100,000 across the 2 platforms that we'll go racing on during BMW Sim Live later this year, the showcase of all things BMW Sim Racing, and maybe some surprises as well. Here's a look at your race results, though. After 2 hours, after 53 laps of competition, it's Team Redline Red victorious once more. Alejandro Sanchez will grab some very well-earned points for the Apex Racing Team number 98 car, while Johnny Vecchio continues the impressive run for Team Redline Blue on the 3rd and final step of the podium. $600 going to the team for Team Redline Blue. Diogo Pinto misses out on the prize money but gets some points on the board for Team Redline Purple. Kova 707 Antiohola finally survives the second stint of one of these races. Behind him, some real-world experience with Shane Van Gisbergen, the V8 Supercars champion, and Alex Palou, the NTT IndyCar Series champion, both behind him for Team Redline. Gaio Valero hoovers up some points to get into 8th, while in 9th, Simona Miramarceno, the feisty Italian, works his way forward. Alexei Nesov will grab the final points on offer here today. Andre Melchers into 11th with Luca Wunsch, Elliot Veyron, Johan Hart, and Sam Coitet all behind him. Hendrik Cruz, Felix Quirnbach 16th and 17th with a big red machine dropping down pretty swiftly in those final couple of laps of the race. Vendaval Sim Racing and Zenith Esports 18th and 19th with the Williams Esports Academy car completing the top 20. The late Apex team in 21st, Pablo Castro for PGZ Motorsports in 22nd, with Joop de Ligt in 23rd for the Urano Esports HP team. Lobs Falcons SpongeBob, what a team name that is for Brody Kostecki, a V8 Supercars driver in the real world. Dominic Pusch for the Riley Sim Racing car completes the top 25. German Sim Racing Orange and Christopher Hyman in the 26th position, with Rasmus Busk behind them for Fira. Delta V Racing, Riley Sim Racing Blue, and R8G all behind them. Then we get towards the cars one lap down with Netrex Grand Prix surviving to stay on the lead lap, Mechanic Racing Black, Visceral Esports in both the 145 and the 196, 33rd and 34th, Christopher Dambeats disqualified in the closing stages along with Valtteri Alander, and Matthew Payne, Mikkel Gard all falling afoul of the disqualification limit. For BS Competition's 89 machine, big drama on the Kemmel Straight took them out of the race by themselves, with RAG's Valentin Mandernock also in the graveyard of cars that we'll scroll through now. Big names include Altus Esports Red, the Team Redline Orange number 3 machine. Very big surprises in a big old field that put on a show for us today. So 2 hours of racing done, and we'll do it again, all in a couple of weeks' time. We'll head to the Hockenheim Ring. Like I mentioned earlier, our finale in 2021 for regular BMW Sim GT Cup races. And Ewan, you've got one major passing opportunity, which everyone knows, but you can go for a send at basically every corner on this track.
Yeah, everybody knows about that overtaking opportunity down towards the hairpin, and everyone wants to use it all at once, which is going to be the problem on lap 1, I can see already. Yeah, it's going to be another great race. A little bit more difficult to overtake than around at Spa, let's say, but we didn't exactly see all-out overtaking for the entire race here either. So let's wait and see, of course. Only 2 weeks to wait until the next round.
July 10th, same place, same time. BMW Esports, RaceSpotTV. July the 10th, 1 p.m. UTC. Join us for the fun. We'll grab a final look at the schedule as we pass some time, hope for some drivers to come and join us for some post-race chats. But of course, we're winding down now, Ewan. It's been a busy couple of weeks for the BMW Sim GT Cup races. 2 in June, 1 in just a couple of weeks' time. Then we spread things out again to close off the championship. Like we said at the start, Barber's going to be fascinating. Silverstone, we kind of know what to expect. It's such a historic venue. So much racing goes on there. Suzuka, though, with the final points-paying opportunity on the line, that might be a very fascinating race.
Yeah, with those who are just outside the cut-off line trying to make their way in to BMW Sim Live, of course, at the end of the year. So very much look forward to those races. But as you've already spoken about in previous races, I mean, these final 4 are so spaced out. I mean, it's going to be a disappointment to those who are on a good run and wanting to build momentum, but it's going to be a real relief to those who are starting to go into a bad patch maybe a little bit and losing a bit of form. They can regroup over the 4 or 5 weeks in between those races and come back a bit stronger. But they're going to be 4 races not to be missed over the next about 4 months.
It's going to be all about maximizing the momentum from this day forward. We thank you for joining us on BMW Esports and RaceSpotTV for round 6 of the BMW Sim GT Cup. We leave the Ardennes with Team Redline Red, Patrick Holtzman and Maximilian Benecke, winners once more. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time from the Hockenheim Ring for round 7 of the BMW Sim GT Cup as we roll our way towards BMW Sim Live.